Great prayer. All right, so if you're just joining us, this is our Friday night tour study. This is one of our services that we have during the week. You'll hear more about upcoming events in our regular scheduled services during the announcement time. But what we do is we first have prayer and praise, as we just finished that. And Brian prayed over those prayer and praises. Then we go into the tour portion readings. So I'm going to ask the readers to come up. Rabbi Tom will be our first reader. Rebbitzin, Julie will be our last reader. You guys can come up and fill your chairs while I go through the rest of the announcements. So each reader will come up, and I'll say a blessing over them. They'll read their portion, and after all the readers have read, I'll do a blessing or say a blessing over all of them. After that, we'll have Grace and Gardner come up and take us through the announcements. Following that, Rabbi Steve will come out and conduct the midrash, the Q&A, and answer any questions or any comments that may have come up during the Torah portion. So really excited about that. We always get some good nuggets out of the Torah portion. What you should be looking to get is get your own nuggets, things that you can glean out of the portion to apply to your life. So as we go through, you should be looking for those things. Highlight it, write it down, whatever you need to do. He does go through it very thoroughly, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it as much as we do. All right, so first off, we're going to have Miss Sarah Beth. I'm sorry, Rabbi Tom. He's usually in front of me, so I missed him. Sorry, Rabbi. It was John's fault, just so you know. Okay, because he's... He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of his hands. Amen. All right, so the Torah portion tonight is Beha'alotcha, which means when you light or kindle, which is Numbers 8:1 through 12:16. Rabbi Tom is going to start us off reading 8th chapter, 1 through 14.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aharon, and say to him, When you ascend to trim the lamps, let the 7 lamps give light in front of the lampstand. And Aharon did so. He set up the lamps to face toward the front of the lampstand, as Yahweh commanded Moshe. And this is the work of the lampstand, beaten work of gold. From its base to its blossoms it is beaten work. According to the pattern which Yahweh had shown Moshe, so he made the lampstand. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Take the Levites from among the children of Israel, and you shall cleanse them. And do this to them to cleanse them. Sprinkle water of sin offering on them, and they shall shave all their body, and shall wash their garments, and cleanse themselves. And shall take a young bull with its grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, while you take another young bull as a sin offering. And you shall bring the Levites before the tent of appointment, and you shall assemble all the congregation of the children of Israel. And you shall bring the Levites before Yahweh, and the children of Israel shall lay their hands on the Levites, and Aharon shall wave the Levites before Yahweh, a wave offering from the children of Israel. So they shall be for doing the service of Yahweh. And the Levites shall lay their hands on the head of the young bulls, and one shall be prepared as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering to Yahweh, to make atonement for the Levites. And you shall have the Levites stand before Aharon and his sons, and then wave them a wave offering to Yahweh. Thus you shall separate the Levites from among the children of Israel, and the Levites shall be mine.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Tom. Now we have Sarah Beth. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Sarah Beth, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of our hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us from verse 15 to the end of the chapter.
Then after that the Levites shall go in to do the service in the tent of meeting, when you have cleansed them and waved them as a wave offering. For they are given ones, given to me from among the children of Israel. I have taken them for myself instead of all who open the womb, the firstborn of all the children of Israel. For all the firstborn among the children of Israel are mine, both man and beast. On the day that I smote all of the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, I set them apart unto myself. And I have taken the Levites instead of all the firstborn of the children of Israel. And I have given the Levites as a gift to Aharon and his sons from among the children of Israel, to do the service of the children of Israel in the tent of meeting, and to make atonement for the children of Israel, that there be no plague among the children of Israel, when the children of Israel come near the set-apart place. Thus Moshe and Aharon and all the congregation of the children of Israel did to the Levites according to all that Yahweh commanded Moshe concerning the Levites. So the children of Israel did to them. And the Levites cleansed themselves and washed their garments, and Aharon waved them a wave offering before Yahweh, and Aharon made atonement for them to cleanse them. Then after that the Levites went in to do their service in the tent of meeting before Aharon and his sons, as Yahweh commanded Moshe concerning the Levites, so they did to them. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, This applies to the Levites, from 25 years old and above. Let them come into active service in the service of the tent of meeting. And at the age of 50 years they retire from the active service of the service, and serve no more. But they shall attend with their brothers in the tent of meeting, to guard the duty, but shall do no service. Thus you shall do to the Levites regarding their duties.
Amen. Thank you, Sarah Beth. Next up, we have Richard. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Richard, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of his hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us into chapter 9, reading verses 1 through 12.
Chapter 9. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, in the first new moon of the second year after they had come out of the land of Mitzrayim, saying, Now let the children of Israel perform the Pesach at its appointed time. On the 14th day of this new moon, between the evenings, perform it at its appointed time. According to all its laws and right rulings, you perform it. And Moshe spoke to the children of Israel to perform the Pesach. So they performed the Pesach on the 14th day of the first new moon, between the evenings, in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that Yahweh commanded Moshe. So the children of Israel did. But there were men who were defiled for a being of a man, so that they were not able to perform the Pesach on that day. So they came before Moshe and Aharon that day, and those men say to him, We are defiled for the being of a man. Why are we withheld from bringing near the offering of Yahweh at its appointed time among the children of Israel? And Moshe said to them, Wait, let me hear what Yahweh commands concerning you. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, When any male of you or your generations is unclean for a being, or is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Pesach of Yahweh. On the 14th day of the second new moon, between the evenings, they perform it. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs, they eat it. They do not leave of it until morning, and they do not break a bone of it. According to all the laws of the Pesach, they perform it.
Amen. Thank you, Richard. Next up, we have Miss Amy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Miss Amy, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us from verse 13 to the end of the chapter.
But the man who is clean and is not on a journey and has failed to perform the Pesach, that same being shall be cut off from among his people, because he did not bring the offering of Yahweh at its appointed time. That man bears his sin. And when a stranger sojourns among you, then he shall perform the Pesach of Yahweh. He shall do so according to the law of the Pesach, according to its right ruling. You have one law, both for the stranger and the native of the land. And on the day that the dwelling place was raised up, the cloud covered the dwelling place, the tent of the witness. From evening until morning, it was above the dwelling place like the appearance of fire. Thus it was continually. The cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. And whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tent, after that the children of Israel would depart. And in the place where the cloud dwelt, there the children of Israel would camp. At the mouth of Yahweh the children of Israel departed, and at the command of Yahweh they camped. They remained camped as long as the cloud dwelt above the dwelling place. Even when the cloud lingered many days above the dwelling place, the children of Israel guarded the charge of Yahweh and did not depart. And so it was, when the cloud was above the dwelling place a few days, according to the mouth of Yahweh they camped, and according to the mouth of Yahweh they would depart. And so it was, when the cloud dwelt only from evening until morning, when the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they departed, whether by day or by night. Whenever the cloud was taken up, they departed. Whether 2 days or a new moon or a year that the cloud lingered above the dwelling place to dwell upon it, the children of Israel camped and did not depart. But when it was taken up, they departed. At the mouth of Yahweh they camped, and at the mouth of Yahweh they departed. They guarded the charge of Yahweh at the mouth of Yahweh by the hand of Moshe.
Awesome. Thank you, Miss Amy. Next up, we have Taylor. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Taylor, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, Taylor, you're going to take us into chapter 10, reading verses 1 through 18.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Make 2 silver trumpets for yourself. Make them of beaten work, and you shall use them for the gathering of the congregation and for breaking camp. And when they blow both of them, all the congregation shall meet before you at the door of the tent of appointment. And if they blow one, then the leaders, the heads of the thousands of Israel, shall gather to you. And when you blow a shout, the camps that lie on the east side shall depart. And when you blow a shout for the second time, then the camps that lie on the south side shall depart. They blow a shout for them to depart. And when the assembly is to be assembled, you blow, but do not shout. And the sons of Aharon the priest blow with the trumpets, and it shall be to you for a law throughout your generations. And when you go into battle in your land against the enemy that distresses you, then you shall shout with the trumpets, and you shall be remembered before Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall be saved from your enemies. And in the day of your gladness, and in your appointed times, and at the beginning of your new moons, you shall blow the trumpets over your ascending offerings and over your slaughterings of peace offerings. And they shall be a remembrance for you before your Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. And it came to be on the 20th day of the second new moon in the second year that the cloud was taken up from above the dwelling place of witness. And the children of Israel departed, settling out from the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud dwelt on it in the wilderness of Paran. Thus they departed the first time according to the mouth of Yahweh by the hand of Moshe. And the banner of the camp of the children of Yehuda departed first according to their divisions, and over their army was Nahshon, son of Amminadab, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Issachar was Nathaniel, son of Zuar, and over the army of the tribe of the children of Zebulun was Eliab, son of Helon. And the dwelling place was taken down, and the sons of Gershon and the sons of Merari departed bearing the dwelling place. And the banner of the camp of Reuben departed according to their divisions, and over their armies was Eliezer, son of Shedir.
Amen. Thank you, Taylor. Next up, we have Miss Carolyn. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Miss Carolyn, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us from verse 19 to the end of the chapter.
And over the army of the tribe of the children of Shimon was Shelumiel, son of Zerushadai. And over the army of the tribe of the children of Gad was Eliasaph, the son of Deuel. And the Kehathites departed, bearing the set-apart objects, while the dwelling place was set up before they came. And the banner of the camp of the children of Ephraim departed according to their divisions, and over their army was Elishama, son of Ammihud. And over the army of the tribe of the children of Manasseh was Gamliel, son of Pedatsur. And over the army of the tribe of the children of Benjamin was Abidan, son of Gidoni. Then the banner of the camp of the children of Dan, which formed the rear guard of all the camps, departed according to their divisions. And over their army was Ahiezer, son of Ammishaddai. And over the army of the tribe of the children of Asher was Pagiel, the son of Okran. And over the army of the tribe of the children of Naphtali was Ahira, the son of Enan. Such was the order of setting out of the children of Israel according to their divisions when they departed. And Moshe said to Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moshe's father-in-law, "We are setting out for the place of which Yahweh said, 'I give it to you. Come with us, and we shall do good to you.' For Yahweh has spoken good concerning Israel." And he replied to him, "I am not going, but I am going to my own land and to my relatives." And he said, "Please do not leave us, because you know how we are to camp in the wilderness, and you shall be our eyes. And it shall be when you go with us, then it shall be that whatever good Yahweh does to us, the same we shall do to you." So they set out from the mountain of Yahweh on a journey of 3 days, and the ark of the covenant of Yahweh went before them for the 3 days' journey, to seek out a resting place for them. And the cloud of Yahweh was above them by day when they went out from the camp. And it came to be, whenever the ark set out, that Moshe said, "Rise up, O Yahweh, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you." And when it rested, he said, "Return, O Yahweh, to the countless thousands of Israel."
Amen. Thank you, Miss Carolyn. Next up, we have Miss Janet. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Miss Janet, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us into chapter 11, reading verses 1 through 17.
Thank you. And it came to be, when the people were as complainers, it was evil in the ears of Yahweh. And Yahweh heard it, and his displeasure burned. And the fire of Yahweh burned among them, and consumed those in the outskirts of the camp. And the people cried out to Moshe, and Moshe prayed to Yahweh, and the fire died down. Then he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of Yahweh had burned among them. And the mixed multitude who were in their midst lusted greatly. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, "Who is giving us meat to eat? We remember the fish which we ate without cost in Mizraim, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our being is dried up. There is naught to look at but this manna." Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like the appearance of bdellium. The people went about and gathered it, ground it on millstones, or beat it in the mortar, and cooked it in a pot, and made cakes of it. And its taste was as the taste of cakes baked with oil. And when the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna fell on it. And Moshe heard the people weeping throughout their clans, each man at the door of his tent. And the displeasure of Yahweh burned exceedingly, and in the eyes of Moshe it was evil. So Moshe said to Yahweh, "Why have you done evil to your servant? And why have I not found favor in your eyes to put the burden of all these people on me? Was it I who conceived all these people? Was it I who brought them forth that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom, as a foster father carries a nursing child, to the land which you swore to your fathers? Where am I to get meat to give to all these people? For they weep before me, saying, give us meat to eat. I am unable to bear all these people alone, because the burden is too heavy for me. And if you are doing this to me, kill me, please kill me, if I have found favor in your eyes, and let me not see my evil. Then Yahweh said to Moshe, gather to me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of appointment, and let them stand there with you. And I shall come down and speak with you there, and shall take off the spirit that is on you and put on them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you do not bear it yourself alone.
Amen. Great reading. That was awesome. All right, next up we have Jessica. Hi. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Jessica, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, you're going to take us from verse 18 to the end of the chapter.
And say to the people, set yourselves apart for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat, because you have wept in the hearing of Yahweh, saying, who is giving us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Mitzrayim. And Yahweh shall give you meat, and you shall eat. You're going to eat, not 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but for a new moon of days, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes an abomination to you, because you have rejected Yahweh, who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we come up out of Mitzrayim? And Moshe said, the people in whose midst I am are 600,000 men on foot, and you have said, I give them meat to eat for a new moon of days. Could flocks and herds be slain for them to be sufficient for them? Or could all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to be sufficient for them? And Yahweh said to Moshe, is the arm of Yahweh too short? Now see whether my word meets you or not. And Moshe went out and spoke to the people the words of Yahweh, and he gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them around the tent. And Yahweh came down in the cloud and spoke to him and took of the spirit that was upon him and placed the same upon the 70 elders. And it came to be, when the spirit rested upon them, that they prophesied, but did not continue. However, 2 men had remained in the camp. The name of one was Eldad, and the name of the other was Medad, and the spirit rested upon them. Now they were among those listed, but did not go out to the tent, and they prophesied in the camp. And a young man ran and informed Moshe and said, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. And Yehoshua, son of Nun, Moshe's assistant from his youth, answered and said, Moshe, my master, forbid them. Then Moshe said to him, are you jealous for my sake? Oh, that all the people of Yahweh were prophets, that Yahweh would put his spirit upon them. And Moshe returned to the camp, both he and the elders of Israel. And a wind went forth from Yahweh, and it brought quail from the sea and let them fall beside the camp, about a day's journey on this side and about a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, and about 2 cubits above the surface of the ground. And the people were up all that day and all that night and all the next day and gathered the quail. He who has least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. The meat was still between their teeth before it was chewed, and the wrath of Yahweh burned against the people, and Yahweh struck the people with an exceeding great plague. Then he called the name of that place Kibroth Hatta'awah, because there they buried the people who had lusted. From Kibroth Hatta'awah, the people set out for Hatzeroth, and they were at Hatzeroth.
Amen. Thank you, Jessica. Great reading. Our last reader, Rebbitzin Julie. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rebbitzin Julie, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity upon all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, Rebbitzin, you're going to read the entire 12th chapter.
Thank you. Now Miriam and Aharon spoke against Moshe because of the Cushite woman whom he had taken, for he had taken a Cushite woman. And they said, has Yahweh spoken only through Moshe? Has he not spoken also through us? And Yahweh heard it. And the man Moshe was very humble, more than all men who are on the face of the earth. And suddenly Yahweh said to Moshe and Aharon and Miriam, you 3 "Come out to the tent of meeting." So the three came out. And Yahweh came down in the column of cloud and stood in the door of the tent and called Aharon and Miriam. And they both went forward. And he said, "Hear now my words. If your prophet is of Yahweh, I make myself known to him in a vision, and I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moshe. He is trustworthy in all my house. I speak with him mouth to mouth and plainly, and not in riddles. And he sees the form of Yahweh. So why were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moshe?" And the displeasure of Yahweh burned against them, and he left. And the cloud turned away from above the tent, and look, Miriam was leprous, as white as snow. And Aharon turned toward Miriam, and look, a leper. And Aharon said to Moshe, "Oh, my master, please do not hold against us the sin in which we have done foolishly and in which we have sinned. Please do not let her be as one dead when coming out of its mother's womb, with our flesh half consumed." And Moshe cried out to Yahweh, saying, "Oh, El, please heal her, please." And Yahweh said to Moshe, "If her father had but spit in her face, would she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and after that let her be readmitted." And Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not set out until Miriam was readmitted. And afterward the people departed from Hatzerot, and they camped in the wilderness of Paran.
Amen. Thank you, Rebbitzin, and thank you to all the readers. Let's give them a hand. Awesome job. And the blessing after the Torah reading. Blessed are you, Yahweh, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us the Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen.
This week's Torah portion. First of all, I have a couple of quick comments. Number one, Elder, you pronounced it well. Good job. You were just messing with me beforehand when you kept butchering it, right? You were just kind of playing with me because you're like, your Hebrew is much better than you want me to know. I get it. All right. I know. On my tombstone one day it's going to say, "He had issues." I know. That's what it's going to say. All right. So for you, those of you who don't know, every time I do whatever goofy things I do, he looks at me and goes, "You have issues." Okay. That's his line for me. All right, the other thing is we have a new lesson learned, Elder, from now on when we're doing the readings. We do not give Torah portion readings to yellow personality people with like things with stuff coming out of people's noses. We don't, yeah. Okay, anything that might be funny or odd, we don't give that to someone with a yellow personality who's going to sit up here, read it, and laugh. Jessica. I mean, you know. I did find that funny. I'm thinking, we got the wrong person to read that one. And then they read it, and then it came out of their noses. And she's like laughing. It is kind of funny. And we'll cover that as part of the verses we're going to cover when we get to chapter 11. Okay. But yes, we'll have to screen what color personality is doing which Torah readings in the future. Okay. And then it just kept getting funnier as she kept going along. All right. So you guys ready to discuss this Torah portion? Okay, let's make sure your phones are off and silenced, that kind of thing, okay? By the way, the GWD thing that I said, that's again another thing you do not do on Shabbat. Don't register, don't do any of these things on Shabbat, please. All right. For those of you that are hoping to be the first one in with your Sukkot registration, too late, that's already been done. Okay. There are some people that want to try, but we've already got 3 in, so ahead of you. So, okay, now of course the people who got theirs in had an advantage. One was me, I created it. The second was Tommy, he posted it on the website. So, and he might have gotten his done before me, I don't know, because by the time he told me he did it, I don't know what he did. So, okay, anyway. And then trying to be first, Elder got his in third. Which was not his fault. I didn't give him access till after it was already number 3. Because Mercy, you shouldn't be the only one who's number 3, so there you go. That's a whole different joke. She's like, what did I do? It was too easy a setup, and you know that. Okay. All right, this week's Torah portion, in all seriousness, or putting all seriousness aside, let's get to the Torah portion. Okay. We are in Numbers chapter 8. All right, Numbers chapter 8. Now, as we get here into chapter 8, there's a couple of, look, this is what we're going to go through this. This is not a teaching, per se. I'm going to try and hit some of the things that I'll call them bullet point verses, just the things that I thought you should have paid attention to or understood or that I thought were significant. Actually, all of it obviously is significant, but I want to hit some highlights and things just to make sure as we read through it or you do your own studies, these are the things that I would want you to make sure to have picked up, okay? All right. In verse 11 and in verse 13, okay, it talks about, and Aaron shall wave the Levites before Yahweh, a wave offering before the children of Israel, from the children of Israel. How is he picking the Levites up and like waving? I mean, how is he waving them? That's for you. I know you're laughing already. Okay, so we almost got ahead to read that one. Now, next time, if you read that one, you'll think of that. You'll picture them waving the Levites. Okay? So let's understand what a wave offering is. A wave offering is making a presentation. You're presenting something before Yahweh. Okay? So when you have the loaves of bread as a wave offering, it's not so much that you're waving them, it's a presentation before Yahweh. Okay, so Aaron does this for the Levites, okay? Because what I wrote in my notes is, well, how'd they wave them? And so then you realize it's not about physically waving them. It's a metaphor or an idiomatic phrase for presenting before, okay? Presenting something before Yahweh. All right, so in verse 18, he says, I have taken the Levites instead of all the firstborn, so the Levites are now to take the place of the firstborn in a specific role. So we can infer, sometimes Scripture doesn't tell us something straight out, so we can infer sometimes things, and one of the things we can infer here is that the firstborn were originally supposed to be what the Levites were now taking the place to do. So it would have been the firstborns that would have served in the temple. It would have been the firstborns that did these different things, but he now has chosen to honor the Levites based on what happened at Sinai and give them that role. Okay? Okay. So the Levites, he says, I've taken the Levites instead of all the firstborn. Now, then we get to verses 24 through 26. It says, this applies to the Levites when 25 years old and above. Let him come into active service of the tent of meeting. At age 50, they retire from active service and serve no more. But they shall attend with their brothers in the tent of meeting to guard the duty, but shall do no service. Thus shall you do, just you shall do to the Levites regarding their duties. Okay, so I've talked about this before. It talks about that they start service at 30 and they retire at 50. That we've talked about that in previous. Now it mentions 25. Why? Well, I told you that we've covered that last time we talked about it, that there's a verse, like this is the verse where it says 25. So for 5 years, they were trained. Okay? 5 years of training. And that, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you have to go to how many years of school to become a lawyer or a doctor or some other thing. So this is a very important job with all kinds of nuances to it, etc., both legal and functional, because they were doing temple service, things like the sacrificial system. They were also doing the judgmental stuff. They were the judges, right? You had to come to the priest and have certain judgments made. So they had to know the legal stuff as well as the functional stuff. They were trained for 5 years. Then they did the active service, means they were actually doing that job from 30 to 50. Now, it doesn't say that they stopped doing, because it says they shall attend with their brothers in the tent of meeting. They're going to be there doing the training of the 25-year-olds, it's inferred to me, until 30. They're not going to do active service, it says, okay? They're going to, but shall do no service. So they're not doing the actual work, but they're there with the brothers, I would say, overseeing the training of the younger ones. And also there to make sure the older ones, everybody's doing everything right, because these are your seniors who have done it for already 20 years, from 30 to 50. And so they have the seniority, the wisdom, the experience to be called in for a thought or a conference or advice, I'm assuming at whatever point, okay? So that's an important piece here. Then we see in chapter 9, let's go to chapter 9. And I'm not going to cover this in a lot of detail, but verses 9 through 14 covers the instructions regarding the second Passover. Okay, the second Passover. Now, we have very little, almost zero, mention about second Passovers. Okay? In other words, we don't see and understand, okay, does it just mean you do the meal and that service? Are we dealing with unleavened bread again for the people that missed it the first time? Or what is that all about? And it doesn't really say. I mean, I can make some, we'll call them reasonable, educated guesses. The people that missed the first Passover, some of them missed it because they were out of town. They could not make it to Jerusalem. That's what it says. And so they would be able to do this second one. Some of them couldn't do the first one because they were tameh. They'd become unclean. They touched something, did something, experienced something that would have rendered them unclean. And so they would then have to wait till the second one. And so the significance of these things would have been only the Passover performance, which is the slaughtering of the animal, and the meal that came afterwards. So I would guess that they could have done unleavened bread anyway the first time, and it was really more about the Passover meal itself, okay? And so it talks about performing it, etc., and doing all according to the laws, etc., and right rulings that have to do with the Passover. Now again, the Passover is an event that's at the very beginning of another thing called the Days of Unleavened Bread. So did they also do those as well? We don't know, okay? We don't know. But the significant covenantal ritual that needed to be clean for, or tahor for, was the performing of the Passover. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to a teaching I did called Passover Q&A, two-part teaching, where I go through the details of that. The Passover is actually two separate things. One's called performing, and one is eating the meal. Performing would be the slaughtering of the animal. The second is eating the meal. Now, we don't slaughter the animal anymore because there's no temple. That was necessary to do the slaughtering. There had to be a temple, okay? That was the way the law was written. So we don't do that, but we certainly can memorialize the event and eat the meal, okay? Now, and so all those details are given in the Passover Q&A. All right, so the second Passover. By the way, interestingly enough, I don't have this in my notes, but I'm going to go find it in John 19, I believe it is. Okay? Let me just make sure. Okay, in John 18, okay, and verse 28, okay, so it says this, they led Yeshua from Caiaphas to the palace, and it was early, and they themselves did not go into the palace lest they should become tameh, be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. So in their minds, going into the palace would have made them unclean, which I'm not really sure it would have. I mean, that's more Talmudic than actual Torah, but it would have made them unclean, and therefore they didn't do it, so they didn't want to have to wait till the second Passover. Because nobody wanted to wait to the second Passover, okay? You just wanted to go ahead and do it with everybody at the right time. Okay, well, not that the second Passover was the wrong time, but it's only for those that have absolutely no way they could have done it the first time, right? Okay, so it's not one of those things like, well, the first one's not convenient, so I'll wait to the second one. That was not an acceptable thing. You had to make every effort to be ready for the first one if you could. But it's interesting that if you don't know about these things, you would not understand what was going on here in John. By the way, this is also part of the proof, and you can watch the Q&A part 2, the Passover Q&A part 2. This is also part of the proof that they had not, the disciples that is, and the Messiah, had not had the Passover meal before this is happening. This is after they ate the Last Supper, while they're trying to figure out what to do with Yeshua, running in between Caiaphas and Pilate and going back and forth. After he was arrested, they had not eaten the Passover meal yet. Now, it's not like you can wait and do it another day, a different time. That meal had to be eaten when it had to be eaten, okay? So that is, again, some evidence that the Last Supper was not Passover, okay? Because they ate a meal. The rest of these guys hadn't eaten anything because that meal was the night after Yeshua died. Because Yeshua was killed the same time that they were slaughtering the lambs or performing the Passover, giving us the imagery of him as our Passover lamb, okay? Doesn't work so well if he dies the day before, okay? All right, so he was killed. So what about that meal? Well, you have to go listen to the teaching. I explained it in more detail. Okay, that was, I think, one of the few things that Christianity actually nailed correctly. Is that the right way for me to say it? All right, one of the things that they actually got right, okay, is calling it a Last Supper. Because it certainly was his Last Supper. That's the Last Supper that he ate. I think it was more than that in terms of there's a lot of speculation that because they were Galileans, the Galileans had a tradition of doing what's called the fast of the firstborn, and then they would have a big meal together the night before the Passover meal, and they would fast that 24 hours till the Passover meal. Because after all, the people that were at risk in the Exodus story, where the plague was going to kill, was the firstborn. So they have this tradition of doing the fasting of the firstborn. There also was a tradition that teachers, and by the way, Yeshua wasn't the only one who had students walking around with him and traveling and doing things, that when they would graduate their class, they would have sort of a graduation sort of dinner, and saying, okay, you guys are graduated, I'm going to get my next batch of students, okay? So either one of those could work very nicely for what was going on in the Last Supper. All right, so and if all of you online who think I'm all wrong, don't argue online, please. Don't go drive the Shamash team crazy with that. Listen, okay. All of you listen to me right now. I don't care if you agree, disagree, don't like, do like, whatever I do. Abba's watching all of you. And he's watching to see how you handle what comes from a position of authority. Whether you're going to respect that authority. You don't have to agree with me. I'm maybe not your authority, but I'm a person in a position of authority. If you don't agree with me, at least show the respect to go listen to what I said. I don't mean what I said just now. I mean the actual teaching where I go and make the case and argue in verse by verse. Then you can go ahead and disagree with me if you want, but at least show the respect. Instead of saying, oh, you're wrong, it was a Passover. Maybe, maybe not. I don't think it was. I got lots of reasons why. I'll give you a very simple thing most of you have heard me say. Generally speaking, when you eat an animal, do you kill it first or eat it first? Simple question. Okay, so if he died when they killed the lambs, how did they eat it already? Okay? You got to kill the animal first. Okay? And so let's not argue. Oh, but Yeshua said that they needed to find a place to keep the Passover. Yes, because they still needed to keep it after he died. And he wasn't going to be there to help them do all of that because he was going to be dead. So he told them, go make sure you have a place to do all these things. Because they weren't going to be able to scramble and figure it out right after he died. Okay? They had to be ready to do all these things. All right. Let's continue here. All right, so then we have verses 15 to 23. Okay, so when you start reading this, it says, let me go back to Numbers. I was still in John. Okay, so in 15, it says, and on the day that the dwelling place was raised up, the cloud covered the dwelling place and the tent of witness, and from evening until morning it was above the dwelling place like the appearance of the fire. Okay, thus it was continually, the cloud covered it by day and the appearance of fire by night. And whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tent, after that the children of Israel would depart. Okay, so it goes through this whole discussion about when the cloud lifted and moved, they had to follow it. Okay? So, cloud's moving, we're moving. They moved only when the cloud moved, not when they had an issue with leadership or some other thing with each other or some personality problem. They only moved when the cloud moved. Okay? Because I can promise you, look, this is the deal with Moses for a second. If his own brother and sister, we're going to read about that, right, had a problem with him, I'm guessing others probably did too. As we're going to see with Korach and all these other ones, right? And so Yahweh's saying, look, you're a nation. You're going to have your issues. But you don't move till I move. Okay? Now, for you guys, the first step in all of this is finding where his presence is, or the cloud, so to speak, is. Not the cloud down the road. Okay? The cloud right here. All right? His presence. Okay? And not that tent either. Okay? But it says that when the cloud was over the tent. All right? Now, so your job, okay, must be to find that presence. That's where you need to be. And then you need to, once you find it, you need to stay there unless it moves. If it doesn't move, you don't move. Oh, but I don't like the leadership. Not everybody liked Moses either. I mean, we all think he's great because we're reading about him, we think he's great. But if we were living in those days, look, not everybody thought Yeshua was great. He said a few things and people walked away. What do you mean if unless we eat your body and drink your blood, blah, 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 what are you, vampire? Cannibal? I mean, they didn't understand him, so they walked away. Some people don't understand me and they walk away. But what we're told here in Scripture is, cloud moves, we move, but only when that happens. No other reason. Problem is, some of you have been to church after church and congregation after congregation because you thought you were looking for a teacher or people that you could feel. You weren't looking for his presence. And I'm not talking about in some emotional manifestation. I mean, what we see here. We're going to see here in a little bit of the verses when we talk about, in chapter 11, the 70 selected, right? And then, of course, Joshua has a little bit of a problem with that, etc. Now, it's important that we understand, okay, that when we're dealing with these things, we're talking about instruction, authority. You know, when Yeshua was speaking in one of the chapters, it mentions that people were sort of awestruck with the idea that he didn't sound like just everybody. He sounded like someone, it says, bearing authority. In Scripture, we call that a prophet. Okay? The churches have not, Christianity has not done you any favors explaining what prophets are. A prophet is a very simple thing. The first time it's mentioned, actually, is with Moses and the 70, okay, where they were prophesying in the camp. And the prophet was someone who simply spoke the word of authority, the word of Yahweh with authority. In other words, he sounded like what Moses was doing. He spoke with authority. It didn't say that he spoke the future, although he did from time to time. But mostly he was trying to tell them, this is what the Creator expects of you. And they were the Creator's words, not his own words. Today we do the same thing because we have the words. So you don't want to listen to, by the way, do not listen to, run from the people who say all of a sudden, I got a word from God, I have a word from above, I got a word from Yahweh, and it's not necessarily what's in this book. They got their own little private little thing. Okay? Run from that. I promise you, when the two witnesses show up, they're not going to say anything that's not already in this book. And they're going to be the two witnesses. Okay? These guys who have new insight and all this, I know, and end time, and this nonsense and that nonsense, stop. Don't fall for that stuff. Okay? I speak very authoritatively, like with a lot of strength behind my words, but I'm speaking this. I'm not speaking this. It's not me, right? I'm reading you this and trying to get you to hear it and do it and walk it and live it. All right, so this is important, okay? So 15 through 23 talks about this, whether when his presence leaves, we'll use that as the picture of the cloud is supposed to say his presence, because sometimes it was a fire, at night it was a cloud during the day. Now, we do have in chapter 10 two things that are just important to note. In verse 5, it mentions when you blow a shout. And then in verse 6, it says that when you blow a shout a second time and the camp goes, and then the word shout there, okay, in verse 6, and the word shout in verse 5 are two different words. One is the tekiah, verse 5. So when we have Rosh Hashanah, when we have the Feast of Trumpets, and we blow we sound the calls that are traditional for that time. So we have the three calls that are done. One is called tekiah, which is the blast. So it's like, all right? Then you have the shout that you see in verse 6, okay, for them to depart, and this is truah. And truah is a sequence of 9 blasts. So it's like, da 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 da. Remember, this is used like we use a bugle today in the military. They would sound the shofars, everybody knew what the different patterns of blast was, and so they knew what was happening. Certain sounding of blast, they knew the leaders of thousands or hundreds or whatever were coming to have a meeting, they were being called to a meeting. Certain blasts, they knew, everybody pack up, we're moving. Certain blasts went, we're going to war. They knew what was happening based on the blasts, okay? All right, the third one is not mentioned here, it's shevarim, which is three blasts. You have tekiah, Shvarim, and you have Truah. Okay. Then we have verses 35 and 36 towards the end of the chapter. It says, and it came to be whenever the ark set out that Moshe said, rise up, O Yahweh, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you. And when it rested, he said, return, O Yahweh, to the countless thousands of Israel. So when we get our new building, okay, which we're, dealing with the government, to get them to move at a human pace is very frustrating. But anyway, when we get this property finally built in the next, I promise you, by April of 25, we'll have Passover in this new building. Anyway, yeah, get excited, all right? And it will have what's called an aron. An aron is where the Torah scroll goes, and it will have a Torah scroll that we will have made for us. So we'll have our own Torah scroll, and that Torah scroll, when it's taken out of the ark or the aron, they recite verse 35. That's a tradition, okay? And then when it's returned to the aron, the verse 36 is recited as a tradition, okay? Just so you know, because we will have a Torah service with some of the traditional liturgy that goes with that, and so you'll now know that this is a place where some of it comes from, okay? So when you're about to take the Torah scroll out of the ark, you're going to read, rise up, O Yahweh, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you. And then when the service is over, you're going to return it to the ark, or the aron. You're going to say, return, O Yahweh, to the countless thousands of Israel. All right. Then we get to chapter 11. Let the fun begin. All right? I want you to really pay attention. This is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but this is the most serious of serious things. And I'm not being a sarcastic wise guy here, okay? Because this is where you guys need to pray a lot. It came to be when the people were as complainers. This is no joke. We get a lot of phone calls. A lot of people out there complaining about their life, about other people, about whatever, okay? Especially about leadership. And you see people get on Facebook and they post. It says, the people became as complainers, and this is evil in the ears of Yahweh. So we need to be really careful with how much whining and complaining we do. Because there's an awful lot of it happening here in the desert. Matter of fact, years and years ago, when I first taught these Torah portions, I had little subtitles for them each week that I would do them. And there was one of them, I can't remember which one it was, but it was called Whine, Whine, Complain, Complain. Because that's all they were doing, okay? And it was probably in the chapter, it was like, we're thirsty, we're hungry, we're this, we're that, okay? And so, and by the way, don't complaints generally, aren't they pointing a finger almost always up at some authority figure? Because you let this happen, you didn't fix it, why can't you do that? How come this is not this way? Well, it's all this whining, finger pointing, complaining stuff. This is evil in the ears of Yahweh. It says it right there. Yahweh heard it, and his displeasure burned. And the fire of Yahweh burned among them and consumed those in the outskirts of the camp. Do you think there's going to be any complaining and whining in the kingdom? Why do you think there won't be? Because the complainers won't be there. Or they will have figured out how to grow up and not complain anymore. Okay? Look, for those of you that are listening and you're new, this is not what you've been taught for 2,000 years, okay? It's not like you find out there's a Messiah and you make some sort of altar call and now you're in the kingdom. You have to become Yeshua-like. You have to become the type of person that can exist in a forever suit healthily. And that's emotionally as well as physically, right? Actually, the physical, don't even worry about it. He's going to give you a new body. But it's the psycho-emotional stuff that has to be healthy. And if you don't get there, you're not getting there. Don't be mad at me for saying this. Complaining, whining, all that nonsense is evil in his ears. You see something that's not right? You either accept it as being okay or you fix it. There's only two choices: whining, complaining, and pointing a finger and blaming and this. That is evil in his ears. There will be none of this in the kingdom. If you disagree, you can disagree. I don't know how you can disagree with that. Why would you think that the creator of all things is going to spend forever with a bunch of whiny, complaining people? Okay? You wouldn't want to do that now. Why would you think anybody would want to do it forever? And he's smarter than you are. Okay? And you're smart enough to know, I don't want to do that. Anybody have, if you're old enough, anybody ever have children in the house that said, if you're not going to knock it off, you can go complain somewhere else? You don't like it in my house, go somewhere else. That's what you're always going to say. You don't like it in my house? I got a hot little fire over here you can jump in. Okay? Hope you're wearing your asbestos swimsuit. All right? But this is important. If there's nothing that you get out of this week's Torah portion, be afraid of complaining and whining. And I'm not talking about you see something's not right and you want to go and try to get it fixed because so there's so much, you're bringing that information to someone. Okay? I'll give you an example. I do this in restaurants all too often, unfortunately, because often the service is terrible or something's not right. So I'll call for the manager. And I say to the manager, Mr. Manager, I can say this because I have people that worked for me over the years. I said, look, as an employer or a manager, I would want to know this information, so I'm going to share with you some information that I think you should know. So I'm not complaining. I'm saying, look, the food wasn't done right. They tried it twice and still messed it up. The service was this or that. And so I'm not complaining. I'm sharing information, hoping something will be fixed. Does that make sense? Okay? I'm not yelling. I'm not attacking. I'm saying, look, I'd want to know this if I was in your position, so I'm sharing it with you. And they almost always appreciate that. Okay? Now, let's be serious about this. Don't be as complainers. Okay? Now, by the way, look what they do in verse 2. Who do they cry out to? Moshe. All right? Now, Moshe is probably who they're pointing the finger at and complaining about, but then when the fire starts consuming everybody, they cry out to Moshe. And the fire dies down. Interesting. So they obviously learned their lesson very quickly, and in verse 4, they're whining about being hungry. Well, like 2 verses later. It doesn't say, like in the movies, 6 months later, and then and then you get a next scene. No, this is like 5 minutes later. It says then in verse 3, they call the name of the place Taberah because of the fire, and then the mixed multitude who were in the midst of, lusted greatly so that the children of Israel also wept again. They were crying and whining, so it's not just complaining. They're weeping. I'm hungry. See, some of you don't like it when you call here, but we slap that. Okay? But not because we're mean, but because you're only doing that because nobody ever slapped it. That's why society is spiraling into weakness, because there's nobody there telling everybody, knock it off. All right? And so, we've just gotten worse and worse generationally in that, I remember I saw some meme, maybe on TikTok, wherever it was, but I saw some meme, kids playing some video game, and the father from back in the 70s or 80s walks in, tells him turn off the game. Kid says no. Father grabs it, throws it against the wall, and breaks it, walks out. All right, whatever it is. Then the next generation one comes. So finally, the guys, would it be? If I don't want to disturb you, but if it would be okay if maybe you could just turn it down a little bit. It's like, are you kidding me? Actually, one was really funny. Father walked in the room, kid's playing video games, stands in front of it so he can't see. The kid says, hey, you're in the way. He says, you need to go upstairs and do your report for school. He goes, Mom, tell your husband to get out of my way. He walks right over, rips the game out of the wall. Mom, which is part of the problem, says, honey, well, she's now defending the kid. Are you kidding me? Dad walks over, drops it in the garbage, grabs the big gallon of milk that was on the counter, pours it over the game. Then he walks over to the kid and goes, go upstairs now. The kid gets right up and goes. We've lost all that. It's right here. We're reading that. That's what proper parentage is. We're reading strong parenting where he's going to smack them for their foolishness and their baby whining. Okay? Look, other people may teach because they want you to send money and they want to teach you stuff that you think is smart and interesting. No, I want you to grow up and be in the kingdom. Okay? Okay, now, and if you're already grown up, I want you to set the example for the others, and I want you to encourage them to grow up too. Because some people think, oh, well, he's not talking to me. Well, maybe I'm not. That's fine. But other people need you then to live this so they see what being an adult looks like. We don't read about adults of Israel anywhere. It's always called the children of Israel. I wonder why. We need to be the adults of Israel. We need to grow up, right? Now, this complaining thing is just crazy. And here they are, and it says, so the children of Israel wept again and again, who is giving us meat to eat? We remember the fish and the cucumbers and the leeks. Always the leeks. And the onions and the garlic. They were like going to like 5-star restaurants as slaves. What are they talking about here? But this is you sometimes. You forget how terrible your life was, where it was spiraling into, where it was headed, but as soon as this gets a little not what you like or something's not the way you want it to be, you're like all of a sudden longing for Egypt again. Okay? You want to go back to Babylon or whatever you want, whatever metaphor works for you. Seriously? Well, you know, what we're eating is this miraculous bread that tastes like coriander seed. Oh, I'm sorry. You're actually eating miracle bread and you're having a problem with that. How awful. So Yahweh, of course, has a sense of humor, as we know Jessica noticed. Okay? So in verse 6, they're like, but now our throat is dried up and there's nothing to eat but this miracle bread, the manna, which for those of you who don't know Hebrew, manna means, what's this? So so we have phrases in English and in other languages, like we call it a whatchamacallit or a thingamabob or whatever. Well, that's what they literally didn't know what to call it, so they called it, what's this? So manna simply means, what's this? They got the stuff that, they're like, I don't know what to call it. We'll just call it, what's this? All we got is this, what's this to eat? But the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance was like the appearance of bdellium. And the people went out and gathered it and ground it in millstones and beat it in mortar and cooked it in pots and made cakes out of it. And the taste of cakes, it tasted as good as cakes baked with oil and all this other stuff. He's telling you, it was great stuff. And we're bored of that. Okay. So Moses heard the people weeping. Are you kidding me? The displeasure of Yahweh burned exceedingly. In the eyes of Moshe, it was evil as well. So then we get to verse 11. Okay? Now, he says, Moses says, why have you done this evil to your servant? Now, he's not saying, why did you do anything to the people? He's saying, I have to deal with these people. Why have you done this evil to your servant, and why have I not found favor in your eyes to put this burden of all these people on me? Was it I who conceived all these people? Was it I who brought them forth? And they used to say, carry them in your bosom, and as the foster father carries a nursing child, etc., to the land which you swore to their fathers? Where am I going to get meat for all these people? Then he goes to verse 14. He goes, he says, for they weep before me, saying, give us meat. He says, I am unable to bear all these people alone because the burden is too heavy for me. Now, notice what happens. We get to verse 15. Look. If you're in ministry, proper ministry, and you're dealing with people in a real way, one day you'll say these words. Okay? Because you guys, I love you, but it's hard. Because I'll tell you why, the same reason Moses is upset. It's relentless. It is unrelenting. I think since Shavuot, maybe since Passover, we haven't had but Mondays every day. There hasn't been a Tuesday or a Wednesday, just Saturday and then 6 Mondays. Okay? Because you know the metaphor of Monday, right? How Mondays are like, oh my gosh, this is Monday. Okay? Because I'll call elders sometimes on a Wednesday and say, how we doing? He goes, it's still Monday. Started 8 o'clock this morning before I even got here. I've gotten 15 texts already. Everybody's finances are down in the toilet and their marriages are going underwater and everything else is happening, which is fine. We don't mind helping all that. But you got to understand, at some point you have to realize on our side of it, we can't please any of you or fix any of your stuff. You have to do a lot of this work, but you don't want to do the work. You want someone to do it for you, you know. Got an email. A lady was saying that clearly I'm not teaching right about the Ruach, because if you guys all had the Ruach, you wouldn't be looking for a man to help you. You would just pray and Abba would just miraculously fix everything. So apparently none of you have prayed. None of you have the Ruach, and your lives still suck. I don't get that logic, okay? You guys, I know, have prayed. I know you've been immersed. I know you have the Ruach, but Abba still allowed you to be in a place not his. That's a teaching that person may want to listen to. Okay, we have one called Peace in a World Not His. Right now, he's allowing this place to be not his. We'll just call it that, okay? He's allowing it to be the mess that it is, which means that even if you are in his favor, you're going to suffer things. Would we not agree that you would think that prophets had favor with Yahweh? How'd their lives go? Can we believe that the disciples who were trained personally by Messiah had favor? How did that go? Yeshua himself tells you how it's going to go. I suffered, so will you. And so that's not evidence that you don't have anything because your life is hard and falling apart. These are the challenges that James talks about when you're supposed to count it joy, because it's going to prove your belief and it's going to strengthen your endurance. All right, so this complaining, so verse 15 he goes, and if you are doing this to me, remember, emunah, he's either causing or allowing, right? That's what emunah means, right? You have faith, they recognize that Abba causes or allows everything. So he says, well, if you're doing this to me, please just kill me, slay me altogether. If I've done anything that's pleasing in your sight, let me not see my evil, because I'm about to kill somebody. Okay? Because remember, Moses had a temper. He's like, please, if I hear one more person tell me how hungry they are because they're bored with your miracle bread, I'm going to strangle them. Okay? So just kill me, because I don't want to do that. I don't want to be displeasing to you and murder somebody. Commandment number 6. It's one of the top 10. If you're doing this, just kill me. You know? Okay? And so I know how he felt. at least in a real, I can't imagine. We do this with a few thousand people. I can't imagine they had 2 to 3 million people driving him crazy. Okay? I mean, can't even imagine. What was that? I don't think they'd have enough to have. I don't think there's a bottle big enough. She said something about needing a drink. I said, I don't think they make a big enough bottle full of that, something to handle that. Huh? A barrel. Oh my gosh. I need a vat. I just go swimming in it. All right. If I get lucky, I'll drown. And then I won't have to worry about it. All right. Shh. All right. So you guys are all laughing, but you're the problem, so be quiet. You think it's funny now, but you're the ones, okay. So after all of that, Yahweh says to Moshe, okay, you're by yourself. Gather 70. He says, gather to me 70 men, elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people and officers over them. In other words, go find men that are already respected leadership people. Okay? This is another point for all of you. Leadership is anointed and appointed by an existing leadership person. But that leadership person should be looking for and identifying those gifts and talents. So it's not like it's something you go to your yeshiva or your seminary to learn. Either you have the gift or you don't. You go there if you have the gift to learn how to then have all of the details of how to use your gift appropriately. But either you are or you're not a leadership person who's respected. And not everybody, by the way, that's not an insult, not everybody's meant to be the leader. We only need 1 or 2 for so many people. He's about to put 70 over several million people. So you don't need very many per capita, so to speak, per how many people you got. So all of you that want to be in leadership, look, if you're supposed to be, you will be. And by the way, I can tell you this from my own experience. Okay, so this is not bragging or anything. This is just stating some facts. Everywhere I've ever been, for whatever reason, people recognize and look to me to lead. Even if it's something mundane. Okay? I remember as a single, back years and years ago when I was in Worldwide Church of God, I went to a singles thing, and part of the singles thing, we did like some sort of games, activities. We got together in teams, and you had to do some of these physical activities to learn teamwork. And so we did these activities and stuff. And so each team, of course, had to pick a leader. And I was determined, I am not doing it. I'm not going to say a word. Guess who ended up in charge? And I tried not to, because leaders lead. Okay? Right? Fish swim, birds fly, leaders lead. Okay? You are what you are. Some of you have to understand, the next role is the Joshua role. We need the strong pillars to support the leadership. Okay? And some of those, like Joshua, become leadership as well. But there's all kinds of roles to play. But just because you want to be a leader, and don't get me wrong, I like being a leader. I mean, this is what I was made to do. I'm fine with that. I'm not saying that, but leading is something I just do. Okay, elder does that. Others do that. It's just they're made to do that. And people feel that and are genuinely and generally drawn to listen to, allow that leadership and follow. It's something you sense in that person. That's why Moses was picked. He's saying to Yahweh, oh, but I'm slow of speech and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, Moses never shuts up. I don't know how that really works, but okay. But Yahweh picked him because he was a leader. The words didn't matter so much, how they came out and did he stumble over them and blah, 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 right? He knew people could look to him and recognize a leader. He could walk into Pharaoh and stand there before him with a presence, okay? And so these were men that Moses is picking that he said were known to be elders. Not just because they were smart or how old they were, but they were respected men. That's what it means by elder. A man who has respect of other people. Okay? He says, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them. In other words, this is probably from the people that are heads of hundreds, heads of thousands, etc. They've already have respect in leadership. He says, and I shall come down and speak with you there. He said, bring them over to the tent of meeting. I'm going to speak to you there, and shall take the spirit that is on you and put it on them. So clearly there was something on Moses. Moses had an anointing from above to speak the word with authority. So that anointing was now shared with the 70. Okay? And they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you do not bear it alone yourself. Okay? Now, then he goes to the food thing. All right, so he selects out the 70, and then it says, so after he does that, all right, I'm going to go back to where the elders are. Let's see. All right, let's go drop down to verse 24. We'll skip the nostrils thing for a second, okay? And Moshe went out and spoke to the people the words of Yahweh, and he gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them around the tent. And Yahweh came down in the cloud and spoke to him and took the spirit that was on him and placed the same on the 70 elders. And it came to be when the spirit rested upon them that they prophesied. Now, this is the first time you see the word prophecy. Okay? So there's a thing called the law of first mention. Okay, the law of first mention, which simply means that the first time something's mentioned, you learn some of the most important things about whatever it is the first time it's mentioned. So if we want to define something, we look to see, well, how was it used the first time? And this is where prophecy is used the first time. So what is it talking about? Men doing what Moses was doing. Okay? He said they prophesied, but they did not continue. In other words, they started speaking with authority, and then they stopped for it at that point. However, 2 men had remained in the camp, okay? And those men, they prophesied inside the camp. So there was 2 that were missing. They were in the camp. And so those guys actually got the same anointing. Okay? So, then we have, Yehoshua, son of Nun, having a problem. He goes, Moshe, my master, forbid them. Okay? He says, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Make them stop. He was very protective that was something he thought only Moshe was supposed to do, speak the word with authority. And then Moshe said, are you jealous for my sake, or that all the people of Yahweh were prophets, that Yahweh should put his spirit upon them? Now, let's understand what spirit means here. And again, for the lady who emailed me who didn't understand, who didn't really ever listen to my teaching on it, look, listen to the teaching called Understanding the Ruach, okay? The spirit, there's many aspects and levels to this, but the spirit essentially is the intrinsic nature of something. Okay? So the intrinsic nature of Yahweh had been poured out on Moshe. And that nature was then poured out on the 70. So when they say that somebody has a spirit of jealousy, it's not a demon or something called a spirit of jealousy. It means their intrinsic nature has become jealous. Now I am jealous. I'm not just jealous at the moment. I'm now jealous as a being. Spirit of anger. So I'm not just angry right this second. I'm now an angry person. Okay? My nature is now angry, jealous, whatever it is. Okay? You can fill that in with anything. Spirit of weakness, spirit of depression, spirit of anything. Your nature has become that. So he's saying, I'm taking the spirit or the nature that's on Moses, a man who will listen and do and teach and has the humbleness that's required for the job, and put that nature on these 70. I'm going to share that with these 70 so they can do what Moses is doing. Okay. Now, where am I on my notes here? Okay, so, Yahweh, so basically Moses says here that he wished that all the people of Yahweh would have the same thing, that all would not prophesy in what the charismatics might say or whatever, like predicting the future and all those other things, but to speak the word authoritatively. Not make up words authoritatively, speak the actual word authoritatively. And by authoritatively, I don't mean like with a lot of strength and you're still saying the wrong stuff. I mean actually correctly dividing the word and doing it with authority. Okay? Now, then we skipped over, but we can now go back to it because it was something that we need to cover. Okay, in verses 18 through 20. All right? This is what happens when you've now done something that's evil in Yahweh's ears. Be careful when you whine and complain, because you may get what you want, but you won't like the way it happens. There's a phrase and a saying that we all have today that probably comes from this, which is, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. All right? So he says, they say, who's going to give us the meat and all this other stuff? In verse 19, you're going to get meat, not 1 day, not 2 days, not 5 days, 10 or 20, but for a month of days until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes an abomination to you, because you rejected Yahweh who's among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we come up out of Mitzrayim just because we had all the leaks? Okay? This is the problem. So Moses said, the people in whose midst I am are 600,000 men on foot, and you've said, I give them meat for a month of days. Could flocks and herds be slaughtered for them? Okay? This is where the very famous verse, people use this a lot in all kinds of wrong ways, about is the arm of Yahweh too short? Okay? In other words, whatever's going on in your life, do you think he can't handle it? Just because you can't see how? Because they couldn't see how, right? He's like, well, could flocks and herds be slaughtered for them to be sufficient for them? Or could all the fish in the sea be gathered together for them? I mean, there's 2 to 3 million people here. Some of you are like thinking, where do you get that number from? 603,550 men over 20 years old. So now add the women and children, you're going to do what? At least triple that? Okay? I would say 4 or 5 times that. And so, because, we're used to like families where, families have what? 1.9 children or whatever. I don't know. Some of you might be that 0.9. That's what your problem is. I don't know. Okay? Or 0.8 or whatever it is. Just saying. Okay. I know Billy's thinking you've got issues. Okay. So, look. Back then, people had a lot more children. So I think it's a very low estimate that with 600,000 20-year-old men and over, that you don't have at least 2 to 3 million people altogether. Okay? So that's why he's thinking, 2 to 3 million. Look, this town I'm standing in right now is 45,000 people. Okay? So multiply that to get to 2 to 3 million. It's a lot of people. Okay? It's a lot of people. It's about how many people you have on Manhattan Island on any given day. And that's only 23 square miles that they fit them on. It helps that a lot of it's vertical. Okay? And so this is, how are we going to do this? How can we, even all this fish of the sea? And Yahweh said to Moses, is the arm of Yahweh too short? Now see whether my word meets you or not. So Moses went out and spoke to the people the words of Yahweh, and he gathered the 70, etc. Okay, and that was all done. And then you know what happens? It says the people were up all that day and all that night and all that next day gathering quail, verse 32. He who was least gathered 10 omers, and they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. And the meat was still between their teeth before it was chewed, and the wrath of Yahweh burned against the people. And Yahweh smote the people with an exceedingly great plague. Okay, this was not just food poisoning. Okay, he gave them a plague. Okay? He's like, if what I have for you is not sufficient, what use do I have for you? If you can't look at me as sufficient, then you're not mine. He said, you can choke on the meat and die. See, we have a problem with that sometimes, where every one of you can tell me stories of what he's done for you. There's not a one in this room who can't tell me what Yahweh has done for them. But why is that not sufficient? Why are you still whining and complaining? Because you have, but you feel like you have not. We have this insatiable craving all the time for more. This is why, and my daughter's song is so powerful with it, Will It Ever Be Enough? The Dayenu song. That's something that we try to remind ourselves. We sing the song Dayenu during Passover, which means it would have been enough. Had he not done this and this and this, if that's all he had done and not done anything more, it would have been enough. But they never got to that place where it would have been enough. Well, I gave them miracle bread. Oh, that's not enough. We want meat now. What's the situation in your life that's similar that you're not really dealing with right? Remember, one of the things I know Elder talked about at the beginning, we're supposed to be looking for in these Torah portions, what we can apply in our lives right now. Okay? What you can take and use in your life right now. Okay? If you're new watching, I'm here to literally mess your life up so that you can get it straightened out right. And you're going to hear straight talk. You're not going to like some of it. Some of you are going to laugh and everything until you realize I am talking about you. And it's meant for you to change and grow and deal with your stuff. Because all I care about is you becoming what needs to become, you changing into what you need to change into to be in the kingdom. It's not about some piece of knowledge and believing Messiah, whatever. You have to become, which you won't do if you don't believe Messiah, etc. But you have to become transformed into his image. You ever see Yeshua whining and complaining and crying and all that other nonsense? No. Okay? And so let's not do that. Okay? You don't ever hear Yeshua going, that's not fair. He certainly could have said when he was praying about passing the cup, he could have said, well, it's not fair. Why do I have to die for everybody? Look at how stupid these guys are and what they're doing and the nonsense and everything. I got to die for everybody? They don't care about you. They only care about themselves and blah, 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 blah. No, he knew his role, his job, and his task. And he knew there would be those that job, role, and task would be worth it for, because they would appreciate what he did. By appreciate, I mean do something with it. Because a lot of you say, well, I appreciate that he died for me, and start crying about, I don't deserve it, and this, that, and the other thing. Okay, that's all great, but what are you doing with it now? He provided you with an opportunity for eternal life, and what are you doing with it? Go listen to the Are You Saved teaching, okay? What are you doing with this? Because if you're whining and complaining, you're not doing the right thing with it. You should be praising him at all times, no matter what nonsense is happening in your life. Just for the fact that he's tapped your shoulder and showed himself to you. Okay? Pop that bubble of yours so you could really see him. All right? All right, let's see. So we saw in verse 32 and verse 33. Understand something really important here. He gave them what they wanted first, and then the plague followed. So be careful when you're whining and screaming and think, oh, see, Yahweh blessed me. Well, you're a little early on that. Hold on. Jury's still out on that one. Give it a few minutes. While the food is still in your mouth and it's still coming out of your teeth, there may be a problem. Because I know so many people have said, oh, he opened this door for me and he opened that door for me. And then I check with them a few months later and say, how'd that door go? Well, it slammed them in the face. Okay? Or they caught their hand in it or some other nonsense because the door wasn't really him. Look, I know we're supposed to give him credit for every good thing. Okay? No doubt. But before you attribute everything to him, 20/20 hindsight's the only way to know. It has to play out. It may seem like him, but it could be time and chance. It may seem like him, but it could be the enemy masquerading as him, making you feel like you're being blessed when you're not. I've told you the story over and over again. There was a rabbi I worked with many years ago who told me that Yahweh made him leave Florida, go up to a part of Tennessee in the middle of nowhere, and start his congregation. And when I met him, he'd already been there 3 years. I said, awesome, how's it going? He said, well, most weeks it's just me and my wife. I said, then Yahweh didn't send you. Okay? Because there's no fruit to show he did. He took you from one place that was doing okay as a congregation and sent you to this other place, and in 3 years it's just you and your wife? Seriously? And you're going to tell me Yahweh sent you? I don't think so. All right? Remember, you've got other things happening that can make you feel something as of him when it's not. You got the enemy, and you also have time and chance. Sometimes coincidence you might think is him because you want to think it's him. Let it play out. If it bears fruit, his fruit, then you can say, this is part of what he was wanting to happen. Okay? Because I've had people tell me all the time, oh, he gave me this job. And then I'll ask them 6 months later about the job. Well, they left it 2 months later. I was like, well, I thought Yahweh gave you the job. He didn't give you the job to leave in 2 months. You just want to label whatever you want to label. Because you're coming out of Christianity. And in Christianity, everything bad was the devil, everything good was the creator, and so you really had nothing in it. There was no time and chance. There was no other things going on. It was just the devil or the creator. That was it. Or Messiah, whichever, whatever. You were just existing in this game between them or something. Okay? No, you actually have a life that he expects you to make choices and decisions. That's why I gave you the teaching, making decisions, the reason you exist. You exist so he can watch you make choices. And part of the choices is, are you going to have Dayenu moments? Is anything ever going to be enough? I don't mean that you should be satisfied and never strive for more. I mean that you're satisfied and not complaining if it doesn't end up more. Okay? You should always be striving because this thing you're in, this flesh suit, is nothing compared to whatever you're going to be doing in the kingdom. And so you always want to be aiming higher, but it's the appreciation or whining problem. Appreciate what you have now while you want more. They weren't appreciating the manna. They were whining about it, and they were saying, oh, you don't meat. Instead of saying, hey, Moses, this manna's real great. Do you think maybe you could put in a word that we can get something else to eat also? I mean, that might have been different. But they were whining and crying and complaining. You don't hear any verses where they were so thankful for the manna. It's a problem. Look for yourself in all that. All right, let's see. Chapter 12. Okay, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moshe because of the Cushite woman whom he had taken, for he had taken a Cushite woman. There is really nothing to explain what the real issue was here, who this was. The Jewish sages debate and argue. They all have opinions, etc. I'm not going to share them because I don't know that any of them are right. okay? Cushite woman would have been an Ethiopian woman, okay? And so, for whatever reason, they didn't like her, okay? I don't know why. It doesn't tell us why, all right? But the problem was that they were speaking against Moshe because they didn't like something he had done or a choice he had made, all right? This is really, really a critical part of the chapters, all right? I know we covered the complaining part. This is the other part of it. A lack of respect for vertical structure, okay? The highest authority in the universe is the Creator. And he, I'm telling you, you don't have to believe me, he watches how you treat all authority because it gives him an insight how you treat him. If you can't respect your parents, that's why it's a commandment, right? The fifth commandment, honor mother and father. You can't honor mother and father, how are you going to honor him? You can't honor your employer, how are you going to honor him? You can't honor your elders in the ministry, how are you going to honor him? I mean, just follow that through. So here, Moses is the highest representative at the time, and his own brother and sister are speaking against him because they didn't like a choice he made personally. Nobody's ever said that about me in the last hour, okay? I mean, people do that all the time about any decision I make. I understand how that feels. But they don't understand that there's a problem here, okay? You know, they said to him, listen, carefully think about if you've ever said these words. All you haters out there that are watching, because I know it's funny. You all hate, but you watch anyway, all right? All you haters out there, listen to this. Have you ever said these words? Has Yahweh spoken only through you? Has he not spoken through all of us? Don't we all have the Spirit? Doesn't the Spirit tell us what to, why do we need to have a man in front of us? Why do we need a leadership person? Blah, 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 blah. You know, this is nonsense. You've said those words, haven't you, some of you haters? Because that's what you're right actually saying. Well, we don't need a leadership. Why does anybody need a guy up in the front of the room and blah, blah, blah? Because we all have the Ruach. Really? Then you come up here and explain the book and see what we can get out of it. And tell me you have no questions about the Scriptures. If the Ruach answers all your questions, then you don't have questions then, right? I'm sure you know everything you need to know. And if you don't, you just pray about it, and then you get the answer. How come I don't know anybody like that? How come whenever we have a Q&A session, we have to stop it, not because the questions stop, but because we run out of time? The questions never stop. Because it's not the way it works. So be careful. This is the key words I want you to be careful with when you're looking at a leader or a teacher like me, and you're thinking, oh, who that guy thinks he is? What, do you think Yahweh only speaks to you? He doesn't speak to the rest of us? And, well, he's put me in this position. He hasn't put you in this position. He put Moses in that position. He didn't put Miriam and Aaron in that position. Respect the position you were given and the other people that were put in different positions. This is the beginning of when we're going to end up with Korach. Because he didn't like the position he was in. He's going to do the exact same thing as these two geniuses. Right? He's going to say to Moses, oh, you and your brother, you got some racket going on here, you know? Gathering all the tithes. And see, again, they're worried about all the wealth and stuff they thought that Moses and Aaron were getting and all this other thing. I get accused of that stuff all the time. Every ministry person does. One day, it would be nice if it could be done to show you all of the generosity that actually comes out of these places, at least out of this place, okay? And you could talk to Elder, but some of you don't believe a word he says because you think he's always brown-nosing and this, that, and the other thing, all right? Of course, his nose is always brown anyway, so. So it's a dumb thing for you to say. All right, but the thing is, people don't think that he would just stand for himself, which I think is very insulting. Okay? All right? He's not a kiss up, this, that. If he disagreed, he would tell me. Okay? If he thought I was way off and doing something, he would say something. Okay? But he also sees things, and sometimes he looks at me like, you're too generous. You're too nice. And I know some of you thinking, no, nobody would ever say that about you. We listen to you. You're like, bam, bam. You don't know what happens every day and behind the scenes and everything else. I'm not saying that to brag, right? I'm just saying the same thing's happening here. People only know what little piece they want to focus on. Okay? So what are they focusing on? This thing that has nothing to do with what Yahweh's doing, nothing to do with leading them into the land, nothing to do with Torah, nothing. He happens to take this Cushite woman, whatever reason they don't like her. Okay? Now, I want you to understand some very important vertical things here, okay? A leader, whatever position they're in, has an authority above them. They are that authority's problem. If Moses was wrong, Miriam and Aaron didn't have to say anything. Yahweh would have taken care of it. And by the way, Moses makes a mistake later on, and Yahweh takes care of it. Okay? They weren't respecting, though, who he worked for, where he was in the structure. If you don't like something that I do or decision I make, why do you worry about it? I don't work for you. I have somebody above me in the structure, right? And so that's part of what's here. Because some of you think it's your job to have to make a big issue. Well, for all of you that think it's your job to make an issue, read this verse right here. Because Aaron and Miriam thought it was their job. And then Korach and Dathan and Abiram, they think it's their job to speak out against. Okay? Look what happens. It says, suddenly Yahweh said to Moshe and Aaron, okay? Well, first it says that the man Moshe was very humble, more than any man on the face of the earth. Why do you think all of a sudden that verse is there? Because I bet you that Aaron and Miriam didn't think of him that way. I bet you a lot of you don't think of me that way. I have been accused, more than anything else, of being arrogant. Isn't that what you've heard? More than anything else, oh, he's so arrogant. Some of you, the first time you heard me, thought, I don't know, this guy, I liked what he's saying, but man, he's cocky, he's arrogant. I'm confident. You're just not used to what a strong, confident man sounds like. So you think it sounds like arrogance. You would have thought Moses sounded like arrogant. You would have thought Paul sounded arrogant, calling the Galatians stupid, foolish, or whatever he called them in Galatians. But you know, because you don't like what you're hearing. So he had to actually say, so that we would know it, that Yahweh, as far as he was concerned, said, the man Moses was very humble more. So he was humble. Okay? By the way, that means he also didn't lash out at his attackers. Okay? And Elder could tell you, I get attacked all the time and almost never respond. Okay? I actually pretty much never respond. I'm trying to be like these guys. Okay? Like Moses. Now, and suddenly Yahweh said to Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, you three. This is dad catching the children behaving badly. Hey, you guys, come here. Come out to the tent of meeting. So they came out. And Yahweh came down in a column of cloud and stood in the door of the tent of meeting and called Aaron and Miriam and said, both went forward. And he said, hear now my words. If your prophet is of Yahweh, I make myself known to him in a vision, and I speak to him in a dream. In other words, I don't do this in such a direct way. He says, not so with my servant Moshe. He is trustworthy in all my house. I trust him. And by the way, he works for me, so if he messes up, I'll take care of it. I speak with him mouth to mouth, face to face, panim al panim. In other words, I speak to him directly. Not that he sees me, we know there are verses that explain that, but that I actually speak to him. Not in a vision. I mean, he actually hears my words. I speak directly to him. He speaks directly to me. All right? He says, I speak to him panim al panim, mouth to mouth or face to face, and plainly, not in riddles. And he sees the form of Yahweh. In other words, he gets we're supposed to be transformed into the image of Yeshua. He gets what that image looks like. So I don't think he sees the form of Yahweh, meaning he's actually physically seen him. He gets what I am, who I am, and what we're supposed to become. He sees that vision. But he doesn't see it in a vision. He catches that vision. He says he gets it. He sees my form. So why are you not afraid to speak against my servant Moshe? See, that's for all the rest of you. Why are you guys not afraid to speak against ministry people? Oh, well, maybe they're not appointed by Yahweh. But how do you know which is which? Really, I mean, how do you know? Okay, so you should be afraid of that. Had a lady one time, I tell this story often. This goes back to 2012, I think, a long time ago. And She did not like a decision I made. It had nothing to do with Torah. It had to do with, we were renting a building and her kids wanted to throw a ball around or whatever. And the ball was getting and knocking into other things and things can get broken. And we had a guitar almost get knocked over, whatever. So I said, we did not get permission to play in this building, even though it's really a gym. We're here to do a service, so no more ball playing. And she started yelling at me in front of everybody in the middle of the gym. People were sitting around just eating we have our meal after, the fellowship meal after services. And she's like screaming at me. And I just looked at her because I knew her. I said, look, you know me. I've known her a long time. I said, I'm not changing my mind. That's my decision. Well, of course, she didn't like the decision. She thought we should take a vote. I said, we don't vote here. Do you ever see anybody voting in here? Okay. No, there's no voting here, okay? I said, I made the decision. That's the way it works. All right. So now, she goes into another room. She's getting her stuff together. She's still whining and complaining and speaking against me. And my wife walked in the room and said, Francine, you may be, it says here, be careful. Why are you not afraid to speak against? He said, if my husband's anointed, you might be really want to be more cautious about what your mouth is running right now. She just gave her good Rebbitzin advice. Okay? But people don't do that. They don't think about that if that person really is anointed of Yah, you're speaking against him, not me. Okay? Because he put me here if he put me here. Okay? If I put myself here, fine. But what if that's not the case? What if he put me here, like a lot of you believe? And you're speaking against him then, not me. And that's what Yahweh's saying here. Miriam, Aaron, you're speaking against Moshe, but you're not. You're speaking against me because I put him there. So now you're questioning my choice and the way I do things. Yahweh doesn't go with that. Okay? He doesn't take votes either. And by the way, he doesn't want your opinion on anything. All right? He already knows what's best and everything else. Okay? Oh, but what about when he talked to Abraham about, Abraham decided he wanted to try to negotiate, and Yahweh was trying to see what Abraham's heart was about. But you notice that when Yahweh was finished talking, he ended it. Because it says that literally. It didn't say Abraham stopped. It says when Yahweh had finished speaking, that was it. It was over. Oh, but what about when Moses did this? No, that was again a test of Moses. Yahweh was trying to figure him out and make sure he was humble enough to handle everything. Okay? So those were tests for Moses. Yahweh does not at all have any need for your opinion on how things should be done. Okay? You do not get a say as far as what he's doing. You get a lot of say in your own life. It's free will. But you do not get a say in what he does. And so he's telling them, you two children, you're out of line. You're disrespecting me and the person I put in charge. I know you don't like the decision you made, so what? By the way, he never mentions the decision. He never has any problem with it. So just keep that in mind. He says, I talk to him, he's trustworthy. I don't speak to him in riddles. I speak to him. He says, so why were you not afraid? And the displeasure of Yahweh burned against them, and he left. And then she became leprous and all this other stuff. Now, bear in mind, the key for you here is, are you speaking against leadership? And the question should be, why are you not afraid? I watch people say stuff all the time. I can't believe they say this stuff against me or any whatever leader because they're just not afraid. That's the arrogance. Okay? Not respecting what Yahweh's doing, who he chooses to do it through, and how he chooses to do it. I mean, I've made a lot of decisions that a lot of people did not like. I've made some decisions that weren't the best decisions. That's between me and him. And trust me, he straightens me out because it's his thing, not mine. I'm just doing the best I can to interpret and understand what he wants me to do and do it the best I can. But it's not for you to straighten out. I get people email me all the time saying, well, I just had to send you to tell you you're wrong about this and you're wrong about this and you're wrong about this. Okay, and well, then they say, I was anointed to contact all teachers in the world and straighten them out. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. You were self-appointed to do that because you're a busybody who thinks you got to straighten everybody out. And your blue is completely out of control because you got to insert yourselves into everything. But they do. But there's no fear. Okay? There's no fear. And that's important that we understand that. Okay? Some of you are thinking, but Rabbi, you've said some things against some other things that are going on out there. No, it's my job to cry out and spare not and let you know as a warning, these are things that are happening out there. These are not people that I'm under their leadership. I'm talking about you speaking against someone who you're under their leadership. Okay? This is what this is talking about. Because go to the apostles. They were very quick to let you know, including Yeshua, that the anti-messiahs are still, they were right there already existing. There were anti-messiahs amongst them already. And they were trying to call them out. Now, last thing with this, what happens to Miriam? She gets put outside the camp. Okay? So Yahweh says to Moshe, if her father had but spit in her face, would not she be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and after that let her be readmitted. So she was put out for a very specific amount of time. It was a week. Now bear in mind, when she was put out of the camp, all right, it says that she was set outside until Miriam then was readmitted. And afterwards the people departed after she was readmitted. Now, she was shut out for 7 days. I promise you, nobody went out to visit her for those 7 days. Nobody went to go feel bad for her for 7 days. Nobody went to coddle her during the 7 days. Nobody, you understand what I'm saying? You guys, all you do is get all so loving, empathetic for everybody who does something to deserve to be put out. Because maybe you don't agree with what happened. Because maybe you don't know what happened. How many people do you think were actually there to see what happened? Nobody. There's Moses, Aaron, Miriam, and Yahweh out by the tent of meeting. And then Moses had to come back and say, she was put outside the camp and she'll be out there for 7 days. Leave her alone. All right? And probably she had a lot of friends and people that loved her that were like, well, what was that? Huh? And probably thought Moses throwing his sister outside the camp was horrible. How could he do such a thing? Throw his own sister outside the camp. We got to remember, though, you would have been maybe amongst those people and you wouldn't have known enough detail to know what was going on. And by the way, you didn't need to. You needed to know that Moses had the right to do it and you had to follow it, period. Okay? And we've had to put some people outside the camp. And it's funny, because the vast majority of you still hang out and talk to them and do everything else anyway. Because you don't care about that, because you like them and they're my friend and everything else. Do you not think that Miriam had friends? I bet you she was popular as anything. But yet, it's supposed to be a punishment. I mean, if they get put out the camp and then do whatever they want anyway, well, where's the punishment? And they have all the interaction with everybody in the camp without, then where's the punishment? Okay? It doesn't make any sense. All right. Let's see if there was anything else that I needed to put out of there. I think that covered it all. All right, so that's it for this week's Torah portion. I hope you got something out of that. Okay, if you got comments or questions, you can line up over here online. You can start typing them in. And remember, you should be afraid before you attack me on all this stuff. All right, you knew I was at the end of chapter 12. You should have been in position. I'm just talking to the camera guys. All right, Mr. Brackett, you can go ahead and get us started. And I'm very excited about the potential to get you out of that chair permanently.
So am I. I got a couple things, if that's okay, Rabbi.
Well, we'll see. We got it's 9:45. I mean, it's almost 10 o'clock.
They should be pretty
care.
quick.
Go ahead.
The first one was, I was wondering how much it actually took to get quail coming out of your nose. So I had to look it up, and in verse 32 it says that the least gathered 10 homers.
Right.
And from what I could find, 1 homer was 58 US gallons. So 10 of those would be 580 gallons. That's a lot of quail. And then my second one is in verse 34, where it talks about how they buried those that were lusted. Does that tie back to verse 4, where it talks about the mixed multitude and in their midst lusted greatly, and then they all started complaining?
Which chapter are we in with the verse?
Chapter 11.
11. All right, so I'm going to guess at this point, all right, and this is just a guess on my part, that the phrase mixed multitude is talking about level of commitment, covenant, and belief, not where they were born, okay? So this is now a mixed, because remember, they had all been to Sinai, where they all covenanted and became officially, all of them, Israel. So this mixed multitude are mixed in their level of belief, okay? Does that make more sense to everybody? Okay? I don't think I've ever taught that before. It didn't come up as a question. But I like the way that sort of fits better. Because if you look at the sequencing, they came out of Egypt a mixed multitude and then became a nation at Sinai. Okay. Janet.
Hi, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, so my question was about, Dayenu, it was, wasn't enough.
Will it ever be enough?
It
Yes.
will never be enough, right? There's something here.
Well, Dayenu actually means it would have been
It
enough.
would have been enough, right? Yes. So you were talking about how the complaining was evil, and at some point you said you have to be careful with what you ask for, right? Because you may actually get it. So what I gather from what you were saying is that we need to have this attitude of gratitude, right, towards Yahweh for what He allows, good or bad. So that doesn't contradict always wanting to level up, right?
No, and I said that. I mean, I was trying to make it clear.
Yeah.
Striving for more is not against Scripture. Appreciating, though, what you have at each level, okay? That's the difference here. Instead of whining and complaining at whatever level you're at, aim higher, okay? But appreciate if you don't ever get higher, this is still fine. I can live with this. I can grow and become Messiah at this level. I'm going to keep aiming higher and keep working at that, and that's fine. And whether it's my health, my wealth, my education, my spiritual life, whatever part of your life it is, you should always be aiming to grow and improve and level up. Right.
Yeah, and great. That's really good. Now, the other part that I wanted to ask you was about, I don't know, for some reason when I was reading in chapter 11, verse 5, when they were talking about the fish and the leeks and all that, right? And then they said there's not to look at but this manna. I was thinking about how some people may want to have more than what they receive here, right? Like more than the manna, which is what you're giving us directly from Torah, how to walk this out, but they want to get whatever else that they think is more interesting, but it's not really relevant to the walk.
Okay, I understand what you're trying to say,
Yeah.
but let me reverse it a little bit.
Yes.
This is more where they're still going back to the old teachers and old people that they liked the teaching, some of the Christian teachers or whatever they were listening to before they found this, and they won't let go of that stuff because that's the leeks and the garlic and the other stuff that they left behind, okay? Look, most of you have heard me say this. If you're new, you've not heard me say this, I understand. You need one teacher. Ephesians 4:11 talks about fivefold, and one of those is a teacher. That doesn't mean you can't listen to teachings by other people, but they can't all be your teacher. You get nothing then but confusion. You need one teacher. That's the one that settles any debate, any argument, or anything that doesn't line up between 2 or 3 teachings that you're listening to, and now you're confused, so you go to your teacher. Okay? And your teacher then says, but this is what it is, and that's where you go. Of course, you want to find an Ephesians 4:11 teacher who's anointed and appointed to be that, not just anybody with a microphone, okay? But it's those people that then, well, I listened to this one and this one before I found you, and this one, and I realized, well, then why are you still listening to them? When you realize they were only taking you up to this point, we need to keep going and going. They were useful in your journey. I'm never going to disrespect that they were part of your journey, okay, whatever mess you came through to get here. But why would you still be, in some ways, missing it and longing for it, okay?
And about, you were saying that there were two major points that you were trying to get across today, the complaining and the how to handle leadership. So my question is about that. In my position as a wife, obviously my husband is my leader, right? My covering. So if there's something that I think that didn't go well because of a decision that he made, right? Instead of complaining, obviously, but I need to still bring it up and talk to him.
Sure.
About it. That wouldn't be that. I mean, if I'm going to be complaining about other people talking bad about him, obviously that's not what I want to do. But I do need to talk about.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And if you're new, you have to understand. I speak Janet. I speak whatever, and I can figure out mostly where people are going before they get there. So let me. I know where you're trying to go. All right, look. When you're dealing with relationship, bringing up issues of challenge should only be brought to the one who can fix the challenge. They were whining at Moses. Moses wasn't able to fix their problem. They weren't just praying to Yahweh and not in a whiny, complaining way, just saying, hey, we really appreciate the manna, right? You start off by saying thank you, praise, right? We always start with praise before we ask. And so you can go to your husband if you're having a challenge, saying, look, I really appreciate you, honey, and everything else, whatever it is, but I'm really struggling with this thing that's happening or this other thing, right? Because you go to the one who can fix the problem. So if you're married, your husband should be, men, should be the one that can fix the problem. And by fix it, I don't mean necessarily all by yourself. Maybe it's something you hire somebody to do, whatever, but you're going to be responsible for making the thing resolve, okay? So if something's not going well, the wife should be able to go to the husband and say, we're having a problem. But just don't whine and complain. Do like I did in the restaurant where I said, you would say to your husband, sweetheart, I think you'd probably want to know this, but we have a real problem with the dishwasher. We have a problem with the laundry thing, or we have a problem with the roof. There's a problem, okay? But you don't whine and complain. You bring it to his attention, expecting him to handle it. Of course, men, they're going to be very frustrated with you if you don't, because that's the role that we have. They're supposed to come to us, and we're supposed to handle it, all right? So nowhere in this does it say that in any way, shape, or form, no matter who you go to, is complaining and whining the way to do it, okay? Now, also keep that in mind, ladies especially. It doesn't matter just ladies. This goes to the men. We'll start with the ladies. If you're married, don't you ever speak against your husband to other people. Don't speak against leadership. Men, if you're in a congregation like this, don't you ever be caught speaking against leadership. That's what we're seeing here, right? Okay? That's why none of you would tolerate it, I hope, if your children spoke against you in front of other people. The whole vertical thing, it starts at whatever level. There should be no tolerance for that. Okay? I'm sure that Moses was being spoken against by his brother and sister in a very public way. They weren't just going up to Moses and saying, hey, listen, we don't like this woman. But they were probably gossiping about it and talking to others about it, saying, I can't believe he took that woman, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is that the problem was, in their mind anyway. Yahweh never said it was a problem. All right? And so let's all be careful about this idea of speaking against and then the whining and complaining. Okay? You've heard me say this many times if you've counseled. Elder says it now. Be careful, you guys. You all want to go to him now? He sounds like me. Be careful. All right? I watch him. I listen to him when he's on the phone, and I'm like sitting there going, yeah, you just keep hitting it with it, because he's not letting you get away with anything any different than me. And some of you think, well, I'll just talk to Elder because I don't want to talk to Rabbi. You're not getting away with anything. All right? Now, you've heard me say this many times. In almost every situation, There are three choices, and the third choice is just not acceptable, okay? The problem is there. You either accept it and have peace with it, or you fix it. The third one, which is you leave it alone and don't fix it and whine and complain about it, is not acceptable. I don't care if that's financial, health, marriage, whatever, careers, whatever it is. You sitting and whining and complaining about something has no value except to get you in trouble vertically, okay? Because it shows him you're not mature enough yet. You fix it, or you accept it and have peace with it. Because I have people counsel me all the time about their marriages. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want to stay married? Yes. Well, then you have two choices. You can either find a way to fix it. Oh, but she or he doesn't want to fix it. Well, then you have to be okay with it not being fixed. But you can't whine and complain and be bitter and this and that and everything else and think that's going to work. Okay? This is for every situation you come up with. Fix it, accept it. Those are your only two choices. The third choice is not acceptable. You can't just leave it alone and whine and complain about it, because you will be a miserable person and never qualify to be put in a forever suit. He's not going to put a miserable person in a forever suit. Someone that can be in a miserable situation and have peace with it, that's fine. Someone who finds a way to fix the thing, that's fine. Are we clear with this? Hear me, please, because all of you will find yourself in this kind of a challenge tomorrow or this week or something, because it happens all the time. Then you're going to call here, and we're going to basically lay that out again. Are you going to fix it, or are you going to be okay with it? Those are your only two choices, all right? I'm not going to, and if you're going to not do either of those, I want you never to call me about it again. Do you understand? Because I'm not going to sit there and hear you whine about it again. You're either going to have peace with it or fix it. Well, it's not fixable. Well, if it's a relationship, then you can end the relationship. That's a way to fix it. It's not a great way to fix it, but it's better than sitting in there and being miserable all the time. Okay? Because sometimes it takes two to fix something, and you can't fix it by yourself. But if you call here, both of us are going to tell you, we already talked to you about this. Don't want to talk to you about it again, because you didn't do what we told you the first time. Be at peace with it or fix it. I mean, this is the way, and some of you don't like that because you want to sit there, and so you'll find your friends who you can just whine and complain, and so now you make everybody miserable in your pity party and your whiny, complaining nonsense, which sounds like evil in his ears. So if that sounds like evil in his ears, you think he's going to let people like that live forever? Now, you need to be afraid of this. I know you're used to the guys like on the Sunday used to get the fire and brimstone teaching. I'm giving this to you very straight. If you can't figure out a way to mature and grow up and stop whining and complaining, you're not getting in. Period. Be afraid of that. I don't want to scare you with hell and torture and everything else. No, you're just not going to get in. Okay? And I know all of you want to feel like you've got, eternal, your golden ticket, right? All these people feel like they're, you made your altar call, so now you've got this eternal security that you're in. Once saved, always saved is a lie. Okay? A lie. From the pit of hell, if you want to add that to it, okay? It is the most demotivating, undermining the plan of Yahweh thing ever invented. Because if you're already saved, why would you do anything? And so you're not getting in. That's the devil's plan. Make you feel like you've already arrived, and then you don't actually arrive because you're not going to do what's necessary. You want to get there, you're going to have to grow up. He says you're supposed to transform and conform into the image of his Son. That takes effort. All right? Look, some of you think I'm picking on you. I am, because somebody has to. You're not going to get there. And I want you all to be there, okay? And I will not be happy if I end up there and all it is a bunch of people living forever just like you are now. That's hell. I'll have realized I ended up in the wrong place, okay? Because being like this forever would definitely be hell, all right? Let's be honest. Taking you the way you are right now and putting you in a forever suit would be torture. You got to become him for it to be a paradise, to be that that kingdom that you know, with all its glory that you look forward to. That's why the Old Testament word that Paul says is there as examples for us to encourage us what we should be doing, and in this case, what we should not be doing. All right? All right, live stream.
Okay, from Tracy Thomas from Shirley, Numbers 10:31. What does it mean when Moshe said to his father-in-law, "You shall be our eyes"?
All right, let me go back and just read the context on that again. All right, so we go back a few verses, and it says that Moshe said to Hovav, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moshe's father-in-law, "We are setting out of the place from which Yahweh said, 'I give it to you. Come with us.' Setting out for the place in which Yahweh said, 'I give it to you. Come with us, and we shall do good to you, for Yahweh has spoken good concerning Israel.' And he replied to him, saying, 'I'm not going, but I'm going to my own land and my own relatives.' And then he says, 'Please do not leave us, because you know how we are in the camp in the wilderness, and you shall be our eyes. And it shall be when you go with us, that it shall be that whatever good Yahweh does to us, the same good he shall do to you.'" Okay, so this is a very simple thing. What has been the role, the little bit that we've seen, with Moses and his father-in-law? His father-in-law was there to be an elder statesman with advice. So he's saying, you will see things I won't see, because you have more years of experience dealing with people and leadership. He said, just like you saw that I needed help, okay? And so he was simply using that as a sort of an idiomatic phrase to say, you know, when he says, "You shall be our eyes," okay? We say things like that today, saying, look, I need an experienced set of eyes here on this thing. I need someone there to have an eye out or watch over. Okay? I think that's as simple as that is. Next. And hi, Tracy in New Zealand. That was Tracy Thomas there.
From Mark S., Numbers 12, verse 1. Is Zipporah being referred to as the Cushite woman, or is this another woman?
Okay, again, that goes back to when I said that the sages and others have their opinions on who this was. And so I told you I wasn't going to pick one of their theories and go with it. So it's enough that this was not about the Cushite woman and why they were mad. The point is, they didn't have a reason that was justifiable to be upset, because Yahweh would have said something if they did, and they were speaking against leadership because they didn't like a choice he made that was his personal choice and it was none of their business. Okay? Which also is funny how people are as far as dealing with people's personal choices when it's none of your business. People have a real hard time understanding the idea of none of your business. They really do. Years ago, I went on a cruise on a vacation. And we had a lady in the congregation who was about probably 20 years older than me at the time. And she was upset that I would spend the money I spent to go on a cruise, which I went on it cost me like $300 to go for a week. It was cheap. It was cheaper than eating for a week and staying in a hotel, okay? But she was appalled that as a ministry person, I would go do this thing. I was like, it's none of your business. I used my money to do it. I didn't use the ministry's money. I thought I went on a vacation. But this is the thing. People just don't have this understanding of what's not your business. Okay? So that gets to be a real problem here. So there are those who speculate that it was Zipporah. There's those who speculate all kinds of things. All right? So I don't have an answer for you that I'm going to go with. All right, next.
Okay, from Michael J.E., Part 1, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. In Exodus 16:1, second month, 15th day after leaving Mitzrayim, grumbling against Abba for meat and not trusting him. Go to Numbers 10:11, 2 years and 5 days after leaving Mitzrayim. Numbers 11:1, complaint/lust for meat, get burnt by Abba. Is this an example of not learning from his first warning for the same breach/sin?
I did not look to compare the two, but I would say that certainly is a good guess there. And we see that just continuously through Scripture where people are not learning. They'll experience something and not learn. I mean, just look at the way chapter 11 starts off, okay? They're whining and complaining. He goes ahead and starts burning them around the fire, is burning them all up. And then 3 verses later, they're whining again. I mean, we're really stubbornly slow and just dense and whatever. We just don't want to listen and submit ourselves to authority. We're always going to be about, but I want what I want, and I don't like what I don't like, et cetera, et cetera. All right? So yes, I would say that that's probably a good interpretation there. Okay, next.
Okay, from Michael, it says Numbers 11:29, Moshe's comment or glimpse about everyone receiving his disposition. Was this done, it says for Moshe in Acts 2.
Well, all right. Okay, so I'm thinking saying is what was done, the same thing that was done in Acts 2. I think there's probably something similar there, okay? The anointing that was from Yeshua, where he had this authority and he was speaking, is now being delivered and launching this thing with the apostles at that point, okay, with this pouring out of Spirit in Acts 2. So I'd say that that may be a good linkage there as well, okay? Because clearly, Peter then stands up and starts speaking with authority in a very Yeshua-like way. Okay? All right, go ahead, next.
Okay, from Lise in chapter 11, verse 28, is Joshua complaining to Moses?
He is absolutely. It's not so much complaining, though. He's rushing to a judgment because he doesn't understand what's happening. And so he's doing, is correctly worded here, he's jealous. He thinks, and he may be in an inappropriate way, elevating Moses higher than he should be in his own mind. In other words, he respects Moses very much for his position, but then thinks that whatever Moses is doing, only Moses should ever do. And so he starts being very protective of other people doing, because after all, that's Moses' thing. And Moses is like, no, it's supposed to go from me to others. Look, it's like, I'm not claiming I'm Moses. I'm saying, but when I do teachings, I expect you, if you listen to them enough, to be able to do 4 things. The ultimate 4th thing is teach it. And teach it means the way I teach it. Okay? You should understand it so that you can do it, so you can defend it, so that you can teach it. But I would expect that means teach it like I teach it. So they're doing what Moses did the way Moses did it. And Joshua's like, no, only Moses should be doing that. So complaining, I think it's not so much complaining. He's appalled, is more like he's offended. So it's a different negative emotion that Moses has to smack a little bit. Okay? Now notice that Joshua handles it pretty good when Moses smacks him. He says, look, that all the people would be prophets of Yahweh, okay? And speak with authority. And Joshua doesn't argue after that. But just understand, he was having a different negative emotion. More, he was offended and appalled that others would be doing because he believed it should only be Moses. And he wasn't seeing the bigger picture, was the transference. I would be loving it if every one of you could get up here and do what I'm doing. And then I wouldn't have to, which is great, because there's other things that I would have to do. I mean, I love doing this, but it'd be great if other. But ultimately, there should be that idea of discipleship and this transference. Now, it wasn't to everybody. I mean, it started off at 70. Yeshua started off with 12 and actually mentioned 70 as well. Mentioned 120 as well. Okay, so there was this growth sort of expanding out from Yeshua. Okay, you had those sort of big 3 that were with him in the tightest inner circle, right? Okay, John, James, and Peter. And then you kind of went out to the whole 12, and then you had 70 to 120. All right. I talked about this a long time ago, but I do have a vision of at some point there being a body, Sanhedrin-like, okay, a body that can be there to help make halakhic decisions, etc. And I believe that, and I have it drawn out on a chart that I've shown all the leadership in our leadership that basically has that exact model. It's got the 12 on the innermost circle of that, or layer of that, and then it adds more to get it to 70. So you add another, 58 to that, and then you add more to get it to another 50 to get it to 120. Okay? Where the elders with the highest level of anointing and wisdom are in the 12, and then the next layers as you work your way out. So everybody has, the ability to share voice and opinion as we are dealing with things that it may be challenging to decide on what to do. Deuteronomy 17-like. Not for voting and all that kind of stuff. We make decisions like that right now in our leadership. I mean, we have people that I tell them in advance, look, we're going to be talking about this topic because the decision needs to be made. I want everybody to come next meeting and bring their position. And then everybody who wants to share a position does. But guess what? At the end of all that, the burden of making the decision is mine. We don't vote. It's mine. But I also have a second responsibility, which is then to convince everybody why that's the decision we should make. And I don't convince them by saying, well, it's my decision, too bad on you. I have to actually make a case and get people to see why I believe that decision is the right decision. All right? And by the way, that has worked perfectly for the last, we started officially with the m.t.o.i leadership in 2013. So for 10 years, that's worked perfectly. Okay? Where every decision that's had to be made, if anybody didn't agree with it, we were able to get to a consensus. All right? But that burden's on me. If you don't agree with it, it's my job to help you see why it's the right decision. All right? So I don't want you to think that any decisions are made, I'm just like, well, I'm in charge, too bad on you. No. That was never done, ever in a leadership meeting. It's always been, okay, maybe the one person, because usually I can put out the case after I've heard everybody explain why my decision, and because there's an anointing there, and Abba's working in the whole group, everybody generally sees why that decision was the right decision, okay? And so, So yes, Joshua was doing something. I don't know if it was complaining. I think he was dealing with other negative emotions that may be just as bad or worse, okay, than the complaining. All right, next question.
Okay, from Nahara Murphy, is there a difference between expressing hurt over something a leader does or says and speaking against them?
All right. This is a really good question. So let's say you feel like a leader did something and hurt you. You're now filtering that through your opinion and your experience and the way you interpreted that experience. And now you're going to go and say what you feel happened and you experienced to other people. Okay? Now, have you ever been upset and hurt and offended by someone only to realize and find out that you interpreted it incorrectly? Is that every one of you said yes, it happened to you, right? So this is where the danger is. So if you go and share that with someone, what if you're wrong? Okay? Because I've had people say I yelled at them and I never lifted my voice. And thankfully there were people in the room at the time that could vouch that I didn't do it. But that person, because I told them no when they wanted to hear yes, said I yelled at them. But they went on public, this person actually was on a phone call, and I had somebody with me who was also in leadership at the time, an elder, and they went on Facebook and said that I yelled at them on the phone. I never lifted my voice over this. I did tell them no to what they wanted, okay? But I was very controlled. But I had a witness who was in the room with the whole phone call, on speaker, okay? So I think that we have to understand that when we're having a negatively charged experience, in other words, we're feeling negative about it, we may not get everything correct on what actually happened. And so therefore, when we start to share that, yes, this is something that can get you in all kinds of trouble with Yahweh, because this would be considered speaking against that leadership. All right? Okay? Now, bear in mind, what's a worse level of it, okay, I'm thinking it's worse, is what Miriam did and what Aaron did. Because what Moses did, he didn't do to anybody but himself. And some of you will still do that. Somebody will be doing something, has nothing to do with you, but you just don't think it's right. And so you'll go and insert yourself in the middle of all that stuff and start talking to people. Can you believe blah, 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 blah? You know? I tell this story all the time. I remember being at a feast years ago. A young lady was on the stage. This young lady, her husband was there, her father was there, her pastor was there, okay? And she was wearing I don't remember, it was a thin strap thing or like something that some of you would have thought was not appropriate, okay? And I had somebody that was with me going, well, can you believe it? And I was like, you know what? You need to be quiet. That girl up there, she's got a husband that allowed her to get up there like that, a father that's here in the building is also a pastor, and her pastor. That's their problem, okay? So why are you mouthing off about it? Well, because I don't like it. Well, it's not your job. It's not your problem. It's not your authority. You don't like it, you don't dress that way. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just using one sort of basic sort of example, all right? I've had people see me do something, then ask me if it's okay. Well, if I didn't think it was okay, I wouldn't have done it. But yet, yeah, you're laughing now. This happens all the time. Elders all the time. Well, is it okay, blah, blah? Well, because they say that they saw me doing something. I was like, well, if Rabbi was doing it, he thought it was okay. That doesn't mean it is, by the way. It certainly means that I thought it was okay, all right? Because just because I think it's okay doesn't make everything whatever. But really, let's be careful with all of that. So, if you've got hurt feelings, okay? We have Matthew 18. It's not really meant for feelings. It's meant for if someone sins against you. But in Matthew 18, when it says go to your brother, if somebody hurts your feelings, if it's a leadership person and you have hurt feelings, then you should be able to go to that leader person. Well, if the leader hurt my feelings, then go to another leadership person and say, I don't know how to handle this. My perception is that this is what happened and my feelings got hurt. What do I do? Do not go to your friend and your neighbor and your buddy and start spreading all of this stuff, because here's the problem. I don't know who's more to blame. The person talking or you geniuses that will believe every word out of their mouth not knowing what happened. I think the listeners are actually worse. You have your friends, all you ladies, and the guys are just as bad, okay? If you're ladies, a wife will come to you complaining about her husband and you'll believe every word she says about him. You have no idea what's really going on. Husbands, the same thing. Men, a guy comes to you, starts whining about his wife and saying this and that and the other thing, and you'll believe every word he says. And you have no idea what really happened. Anybody ever have a conversation like that only to find out because you know the people involved enough to know that what the person said didn't really happen? Or come to find out later that it didn't happen that way? That their emotions colored it a little bit? Made it a little bigger than it was? The fish that was this big is now this big? Okay? I tell people when they come in counsel, if I'm listening to you and you're talking about your spouse, I will tell you right up front, I will not believe a word you say and know what really happened just because you told me. Okay? I will believe that that's how you feel. I will believe that that's how you interpreted it. And then if I speak to your spouse, I will tell them the same thing. And then I will still not know what really happened, except possibly the stuff you both said that you agreed on. You both said certain things exactly the same. That's probably the parts that did definitely happen, okay? The stuff you don't agree on, I don't know what to do with that. But you're going to try to get me to, that my husband is such a, blah, 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 my wife is such a, I'm not going to buy into that. I don't have that kind of empathy to be sucked into feeling your feelings, okay? Okay, I'm not going to be sucked into that and drawn into that. I will validate your feelings are yours, and I will say and I will counsel you based on if that's all true, then what is your plan to handle this? And because remember, you can only either fix it or be okay with it. You can't just sit there whining about it. So what's your plan to fix it or be okay with it? All right? But just realize that's an important part of this. You got hurt feelings, then you may want to figure out also why your feelings got hurt. I would say that 90-something% of the time, feelings hurt is your fault. Why should your feelings be out there to be hurt? Okay? I'll tell you what your problem is, all right? Got to find the right words. Clean ones, all right? The problem is you care way too much about what everybody thinks, okay? You give a blank about everything, all right? And so everybody can hurt your feelings because you actually care what they think. Why do you care what they think? Well, so-and-so thought I was stupid. So-and-so thought I was this. Well, so what? What do you care what they think? People don't understand sometimes because they'll think I'm all mad at this or that or something that somebody did. And I'm like, they look at me, I'm like, well, I don't care. What they feel about me doesn't affect me. What they say about me doesn't affect me. Okay? I'll only get upset when I'm trying to talk to you and work with you and you just won't listen and you want to argue and you want to just throw up nonsense instead of answering questions. That's frustrating to me. That will get me upset from a frustration point of view. I do not get my feelings hurt. Okay? There's one person that can hurt my feelings, and that's my wife. You know why? Because I care about what she thinks. All right? Don't care about what any of the rest of you think. Don't laugh. You shouldn't feel anything about it either. Okay? Why do you care so much about what everybody thinks? You know. And then here's the other side of it. You think everybody should care about what you think about everything. So you want to share that information? Well, I can't believe that somebody would allow their husband to blah, blah, or their wife to do, or their child to dress that way, or this one to do that. You know what, really? Who cares what you think about that? Well, it's just wrong. Well, that's what you think. That's your opinion, okay? There were some people who were at my daughter's wedding on Monday. Didn't like the music that she had playing that was people were dancing to. And I was like, but you know what? It's my daughter's wedding. I was standing right there, and I was dancing with everybody. So you might want to keep your opinions to yourself. But I can accept that you just didn't like it. That's fine. It wasn't anybody in the congregation. Okay? But I'm just saying is, understand, right, that your opinion may be valid for you and everything else, but it's not something to impose on somebody else. All right? And group therapy will continue. All right, next question. Friday night group therapy.
From Jamie Schultheis, was Miriam made unclean when she was sent out of the camp, or just an isolation type punishment?
Well, it was a combination of things. Remember, she also had the leprosy for a few minutes there, okay? But this was also, an isolation punishment, okay? She was being disrespectful to what goes on in the camp. See, and a lot of you don't understand. If you're disrespectful to leadership, we should actually throw you out because it's contagious, which is the point, okay? And so you're being disrespectful to what happens in the camp. No, we don't. Otherwise, we'd have a pretty empty camp, okay? So I learned to accept that because I can't fix it. All right? All right, next.
From Selena Stevenson, how do you tell the difference between having peace with a situation and completely ignoring a dumpster fire? Is it just counseling?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you have a situation and you don't think you can do anything about it, it probably would be wise to get counsel because there may be, and often is, and I think some of you have experienced this. If you come to me, I've got such a wide range of experience now after 60 years that I might have an idea you never came up with, and often do. I see a few heads nodding where they came up to me and go, oh, look, this is my situation, it's all, and then I come up with an idea that was like, oh, wow, okay, never thought of that, let me try that, and then it works, okay? So getting counsel, we may have a way to put out the dumpster fire, okay, and make things work a little bit differently, okay? Or maybe something I look at you and say, look, you're either gonna have to be okay with it or move on, all right? Because it may not be anything you can do about it, okay? So counsel always is a very important piece of this. That's where you double check yourself, and get to see if you're looking at things correctly or if there's anything you're missing, all right? You should be trusting. You have to test it first, and then you'll trust. Or you hear all the people who have been up here and talked about it, but you should be trusting that this position should be given insight when you have need, okay? Ask Elder how many times I'll say something, and he'll look at me like, okay, how did you know that's where they were going? How did you hear that out of what they just said? Now, he doesn't always say that. He'll tell me later. Sometimes he's actually asked me as soon as the counseling was over and the person leaves the room, he goes, wait. Okay, they said this is this. How did you know? And I don't know how I know, okay? But that's because he gives me the insight I need at the time. Now, I'll tell him what I thought were the sort of the hints. And, it's kind of like Sherlock Holmes type stuff. The person walks in a room and they see all these things and they put all the pieces together. I do that when I hear people speak. So as they're trying to describe to me whatever's going on, I hear what they're not saying, but they are saying. Okay? And I've almost never been wrong. And that's not a bragging. That's just for you to know that with confidence, he tends to give me insight. So I can interrupt you partway through as you're going and say, okay, I get where you're going. And you'll look at me like, and then you're like, wow, you did actually know where I was going. That's him. That's not me. Okay? But it saves a lot of time. All right? And so, an elder's trying to learn it himself because he wants to do it when I'm not there, So, sadly, I can't always tell him except be confident Abba will give you that when you need it. Because I can't always tell you how I did it. I just did it. I just knew it, okay? I heard the same words he heard. I just heard of things that weren't said, all right? I've also been doing this longer that way. I've done this type of thing hours and hours and hours, all right? All right, next.
That's all we have, Rabbi.
Well, good. It's 10:30. Perfect.
Just to let you know, about maybe 20 minutes ago, we did hit the 40K.
Yay! All right, so I missed one of the things. When I came out after the announcements, I was going to pick on Grayson for one more thing, because while I was in my office, the numbers actually dropped by 1 while he was talking. And then we were short 8, not 7. Did you guys see that? Gary's like, they saw that. I was like, okay, Grayson, you're not doing that's going the wrong way. But you redeemed yourself and went over 40K. So good job. Okay. Look, it's just random. Somebody unsubscribed and it just made the number go down 1. That's fine. So that's pretty exciting. 40,000 subs. Look, and it's not about us. It's about being effective. Okay. If we were still looking at, say, 4,000 subs after a bunch of years, we'd be thinking, okay, we're not being that effective. Okay, but the numbers, and actually they've spiked recently. We went up like twice as much in the last 30 days than we normally do. And so something's going on, and praise Yah for that. We're reaching some people and helping some people, and, on Shabbat, et cetera. So, we've been averaging, about 400 and something subscribers a month. We're over 900 for the last month. And so that's double. And so that's great. Next stop, 50,000, right? And then I do want that YouTube button at some point. We got to get to that 100K. Right? You got to get to 100 to get the button? The plaque is coming? It's on its way. Okay, Grayson says it's on his way. Okay, good. All right, we're going to put it right somewhere in my office or whatever. But anyway. All right, so great Torah study, everybody. All right, so who opened? I missed who opened this. Oh, Brian did. Okay. Michael, you got your hand up really quick. Michael Condon's going to go ahead and close us, if you'll all rise. And he'll bring Constantine with him.
Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we thank you for allowing us to come together tonight to hear your word, to be instructed. And we ask that you be with us as we go through our daily lives, now through the Shabbat, and then through the coming week, so that we might be admonished by your word, so that we can improve ourselves, make ourselves better, and become worthy for you. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. You want to bring the camera over this way? Or I guess zoom to that. There you go. Zoom it out so we get everybody. All right. Anybody wants to be on camera, come on this side of the room. I got my 2 buds here. I got Constantine and I got Mateo. Awesome. All right. Got one or two more coming, and then what we're going to do is we're going to connect with those people out there that are part of the congregation. Hey, I want to say hi to Brianna and Ben down there in Florida. I miss you guys. I'm glad you're having a great time. All right. So what we want to do is let them know how much we appreciate them by wishing them a Shabbat Shalom, okay? And then we're going to tell them we love them on 3. 1, 2,